So welcome back to Learning Partner. In this video, we are going to complete a Angular 18 tutorial. It will be from very start, means basic installation and everything. And it's not a standard tutorial where I will be just explaining the topic. We will try to complete a project along with the explanation about each topic. Whatever the topics we know, I will try to cover it with all the possible scenarios. And meanwhile, we will complete the project also. That project will be an employee management. That is, everyone will be familiar with the idea like what employee management application will be. So API, we will be using it over here, preapi.miniprojectideas.com and client stripe. This is the API which we are going to use. Now, coming over the setup and installation. So before that, Angular has the latest 18.2, I think, just a normal patch, but majorly it's a Angular 18 version, currently whatever the latest we have, right? From Angular 17, whole Angular project architecture got changed. Previously, we used to have app module, components were normal, but now from Angular 17, we got the standalone component. We don't have app module. New things are there. Signal, dependency injection we used to do. Now we can do that same with the inject. So many new things are there. So that we will also cover. And the basic topic, whatever you know, see, many of guys get confused like from Angular 2, Angular 6, Angular 12, 15, 16, 17, 18. But from Angular 2, the basic things are same, like the basic directives, services, how we create the form. Those are same things. It's not changed. Basic thing is almost same. Just some with every version, Angular team is improving in their internal project architecture, or they are trying to match up the speed, what other technology are doing. Fine. So with every version, there will be some new things, but basic is the same. Now, when it comes to setup, if you are new and if you don't have Node.js, so this is the site, you can simply Google Node.js and you can install this. So you need this software in your laptop or computer, wherever you are going to use. So just install this. It's a simple application. You just keep on click on next, 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 and you will be able to install it. Then either you can use VS Code to do the Angular code, or you can use Sublime also, whatever, or Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio also. Whatever you are comfortable, you can use that IDE. Now, so once you install this, the next step is you need to install the Angular. So how do we do that? Let's see if we have it over here. So this is the official site. Let's search the doc, installation. So this is the command. It's a command line interface command. So npm install -g and @Angular CLI. So you just need to copy it. Just open a command prompt, Windows CMD, and you just need to run it. So what it will does, once you enter, it will install the latest Angular version in your system. This is the command which will install Angular in your system. Fine. So before starting anything, if you don't have it, just run this. Once you run this command, Angular will be installed. Now, how you will check it like Angular is installed or not? So ngv, just type this command into your command prompt. So like this will come. Like in my system, I have 18, but if you install now, it will be 18.0.2 or some 1 or something. That is the latest patch they have delivered. So you will find that. So means in my system, I have the Angular 18. Fine. Now, so once you install the project, the next thing is we have to create, once you install the Angular, we need to create a project. So here at the bottom, you can see this is the command how we create the project. So how do you create the project? So now in my system, I have a local txt. Inside that, I have created a V18 folder. All the V18 projects are here. So here only I will be creating a folder, my next project for the tutorial. So what I can do, let me just go on to this. So I can click over here and then I need to open a command prompt on this window. So CMD, enter. Either you can do this or you can right click and open in terminal, any medium you can do. We just need to open a command prompt on this particular folder because in this folder, I'm going to keep my project. So I have the particular folder open in my VS Code. Now I need to create a project. So normal command is ng new, let's say Angular. We are ng new, then you just have to provide the name of the project. Angular _18_ tutorial. Fine. Let's just give it this name. So this is going to be my project name. There is no restriction like you can have a number, something capital, small, any name you can give. Let's enter. So once you enter, it will ask you like which CSS framework you are going to use, CSS, SAS, less, whatever. So we are simply going with the CSS. Just press enter. Then it will ask you one more question that do you need a server-side rendering? So currently we are not talking about server-side rendering. So just simply press no and enter. So this will create merge conflict on the path. Why it is saying merge conflict? What is this error? A merge conflict on the path Angular 18 Angular.json. Okay, let me just create a folder first because I have node module over here. So that might be creating the problem. So let me just create a folder. Angular 18 tutorial. Fine. Let's go into the folder. Let's open a command prompt over here. Ng new Angular _18 tutorial. Let's enter CSS, no, enter. So now you can see it is created. So this process will run. So if you can see in the background, you can see my project is created, but still this process is going on. Now installing packages. So what it is doing, it is reading the package.json. Let me just open this into my VS Code. So I have VS Code already installed. So what I can do, right click on the VS Code icon, new window, and inside that I can open my folder which I have just created. Open folder, and you just need to navigate to that. So local DXD, V18, Angular 18 tutorial. This is the project which I have created, and we need to select it. Wait, I think I opened the wrong folder. Let me open it again. Open folder. What was the folder we created? Angular _18. Fine. Angular _18 tutorial. Yeah, same thing we are opening. No, something we are not doing it correctly. V18, this folder. Let's copy this. Let's paste the folder. This is the folder. Let's select it. So now here you can see we have opened the proper our folder. Fine. So when you create the folder, the process was going on, right? Installing packages. So what it is actually doing, once we create the empty project, we get package.json. So package.json will contain all the files or all the packages which we are going to use in our Angular project. So by default, we have some packages there, and here also we have some packages. So this process, whatever the process is going on now, installing packages, it is actually installing all the packages, whatever you are seeing over here, along with their version from npm site, and it will be storing those packages over here in the node module folder. Here it is downloading. So that is the process going on, installing packages. Fine. So let that process run. Now, so coming back to first file, like what are the files we have? So first is package.json. So package.json will contain all the packages entries which you are going to use, along with package name and the version. So you can see some Angular packages are there. Then RxJS is there. TSLeaf, zone.js is also there. Then we have some packages which are necessary to run the application locally. So these are the some packages for testing and everything. So package.json will contain script, then dependencies and div dependencies, nothing but the packages which we need to run our Angular application. Fine. So after package.json, we have angular.json. So angular.json is a file. It's like a configuration file of our Angular project. Angular, when we talk about Angular, is a project. So every project will have some configuration file, right? So angular.json is a file which has configuration of our project. Everything what you can see over here. Now, Angular is a single page application, right? Just like React, Vue.js. So Angular is a single page application. So we will have only single page, which will be running all over the application. So that page is inside the public folder. Sorry, src folder index.html. Okay, here you will be able to see that single page HTML file, which I talk about. Now this file will have a reference over here. See at line number 17 index.html. Fine. So, and then we have a main.ts entry also. So what is the main.ts? So main.ts is a execution point of our application. So whenever Angular application first starts, so this is the file which get first executed. Okay. So here you will be able to see the reference of app components. Now here comes the component word. So first, let me just complete the outer file. So package.json we cleared, then angular.json we cleared. After that, we have so many files, git ignore, tsconfig. So tsconfig file is just a configuration file of our TypeScript. In Angular, we normally work with TypeScript. So TypeScript is another language. So it has a compiler also. So it has some settings of its own also. So that settings, you can do it over here. Some are provided over here. Some more settings are also there. You can add it. Fine. So tsconfig, angular.json, package.json. Then inside public folder, this is like if you want to keep some images that you will put it over here. Previously, we used to have asset folder, but now in Angular 18, we have the public folder. Now, src folder. Now in src folder, we have first file that is style.css. So this file will contain all the classes, CSS classes, which you are going to use all over the project. Means global CSS, you can put it over here. Then we have main.ts. So main.ts is a file which will execute when your Angular application first start. This is the starting point of our Angular application. Then we have index.html. As I said, like index.html is a single page application. So here you can see app root directive is there. So this directive is responsible to render our whole Angular application over here. Fine. So let's close it. Now in app folder, all the code, whatever the code we write will be in our app folder. So app folder, you can see we are able to see some app.component.css, HTML, spec.ts, and app.component. So these all four files are of an app component. So when we talk about component, it will have .html, .css, and .ts. These are the mandatory file. Means your UI template will go over here. You can write the CSS over here, and your code will come over here. So app component will have any component will have at least three files. So that is HTML, CSS, and the TS. But we get the spec.ts. So this file is there for writing our test cases. Fine. Now, after that, we have app config. So previously, before Angular 17, we used to have app module. But now we don't have that app module. We have app config. So app config is kind of a replacement of app module, but not everything it will do. It has some things, just the provider. Fine. Now, then we have app route.ts. So this is a routing file where we are going to create a route. As Angular is a single page application. So obviously, we have to achieve that navigation based approach. Means we are able to navigate from one page to another. So that look and feel or that mechanism we can implement by routing. So here we have to create the routes. Fine. Now, in the app folder, I said like in the app folder, we are going to write every code. So now we will start with the topic. So just to discuss about the project. So if you see, this is the Swagger. Swagger is nothing but a API documentation site where you can see like what are the APIs, what are the methods it has, what type of data it needs, what type of data it is going to return like that. Okay. Now, so basically first we need to create the component. So here we have so many components like roles, designation, we have employee, then we have client project, and so many things are there. So first we need to create the component. So what is component? So when we talk about component, so component is for now just consider component as a page. If you know before starting with Angular, you must have already understand or the basic knowledge of HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript. So when we used to work with HTML, if we have to create new page, we used to create a physical file. But when it comes to Angular, we have to actually create a component. So in Angular, if you need to create anything, you need to run a command. So that will come from the Angular CI, the first package what we installed. Because of that, we were able to create the project. Just like that, if you need to create a component, you need to run the particular command. So inside this app folder, I will create a folder so that I will create a new folder inside this app folder. So all our code will go inside this app folder only. So let's create a new folder. And here folder name I will give as components. It's not mandatory, but just we should have a folder, and there we will put all our component just to separate everything. So now in this folder, I have to create my component. So what I can do, just right click on this folder and open in an integrated terminal. We are just opening a command prompt on this folder. So in VS Code, we get the integrated command prompt. So this is nothing but a command prompt which is integrated inside the VS Code. So now here we have to create the component. So how do we create the component? So again, ng generate component, then your component name. So let's say first component which we are going to need for our project is rules. Enter. So what it will does, it will create component. When I said component will consist normally 4 files, but mandatory 3 only: HTML, .ts, CSS. So if I expand, here you can see we have got 4 files, right? So component will consist of at least 4 files. So this is one way to create the component. Another way is, instead of long writing generate and component, you can write ng generate, a shortcut, C for component. Then we have designation. Second component I am creating, enter. I'm not explaining the whole project right now. Let's just first complete the basic topic, then I will explain the project. So we have created 2 components. First was roles and second was designation. So see, both are visible over here. Fine. Now let's see the role component. So in role component, if we visit role.component.ts, so here you can see we have got some basic code. And all the files are .ts. .ts means it's an extension for the TypeScript. So here you can see we are able to see something at the component, and inside that we are able to see some key value pair data. Then we have a class. This is a TypeScript class, and we have some import also, right? So now this is what your component look like. From Angular 17, all the components are standalone by default. So that's why you get standalone true. You get the import statement. Previously, we had the import statement, but we were not using it because we had the app module to add all the import. But now from standalone component, whatever the imports you need, you can import that over here only. Now here you can see this is what we call as a component decorator. Fine, decorator. So decorator is a word. Decorator means it will provide the information about the class, like what this class is going to do. So this class is a component. So that's why at the above the class, we have this component decorator. Fine. So as I said, component is a combination of 3 files: HTML, CSS, and .ts. So that linking is over here. So in the component decorator, for this component, what is the HTML? Role component.html. Row and CSS, role component.css. Fine. So that is how all the files are linked together. Fine. Now, so first, basic like variable declaration. When we talk about Angular first, or Angular or React or any technology, whenever we start learning, first like variable declaration. How do we create the variable? Because variables where we are going to store the data. So how do we create the variable? Let's say this is a role component, and inside the class, you need to create the component, not outside, not before. Inside the class, you need to create the variable. So when we talk about TypeScript, TypeScript has some data type, that is string. Then we have number. Then we have Boolean. Then we have date. Then we have object. And then we have array. These are the basic and derived data type. Again, we have null and undefined as well. So whatever the data type you might be familiar from JavaScript, those data types are available over here also. Now, how do you create a variable? So, okay, before that, let's try to run the project also. Now, how do you run the project? So if you open your folder properly, then what you need to do, you just need to open a new terminal. So you can do over here. Plus icon is there. Just click on it. You will open a new terminal on the project parent directory. How do you run the project? So ng serve. So this is the command to run your project. So once I enter, it will compile my project and it will run the project on localhost 4200 port number. So here you can see localhost 4200. So now we just need to open this. Let's open a new tab, And let's write localhost 4200. So you can see this is the basic code what we get. And by default, we just have an app component. So whatever the code you are seeing, that is coming from over here. See, image and everything. So this is what you are able to see. Let's try to get rid of everything. Let's simply print h1 Angular. If I save, you can see my application again compiled and my UI got refresh again. See, I'm able to see the word what I have typed into Angular.component. Fine. Now, coming back to role component. So as I said, app component is our parent component. Now we have created two components. So let's say I want to see the role component. So in component decorator, we have something selector. So selector is something by which we can call or render a component into another component. Let's say I need to render this role component into our app component. So what I can do, I need to first import these into my app component.ts because all components are standalone. So let's say in one component, you need to render another component. So you need to first import that. So in app component.ts, in the import section, we need to import our component, that is roles component. So see, once I type role, it is suggesting. So once you click, it will add the import also automatically. Now you can use the import. So after Angular app -roles like this. So whatever the selector you have, this you can render like a HTML tag. This is familiar to you. It looks like an HTML tag, but it's a selector of your component. Fine. Let's do the save all and let's check. After hello, you can see role work. Now this role work from where it is coming in our role component in HTML, you get it something like that. So in app component over here, we have rendered our first component that is role. Now coming back to our variable declaration. Let's close everything. Now over here, what do we have? How do we create different variable? Let's say first name, data type string is equal to something value. So first name, then you are specifying the data type for this variable string. So when we talk about string, either we can use double quote or single quote, then only we can store the value. Let's say Angular tutorial. Fine. This is one variable, one way of declaring the variable. Then this is string. So if you hover on that, you can see data type is string. Another way is Angular version equal to directly I'm assigning some value 18 version 18. So now if I hover on this, still I'm able to see the data type string because we have assigned the value integer. So it has taken, string value. So it has taken the data type. Fine. So these are the ways how we can create the variable. Let's create a number also. Let's say version :number is equal to 18 like this. As a standard, you should follow this way of creating variable. Always provide the data type also so that your variable will be a strongly typed data. Okay. So this is how you create the number. Then let's say is active :boolean. Boolean will have only two values, true and false. False. Let's say then we have date, current date :date, capital D is there, equal to new date. How do we read the current date? Just like in the JavaScript, we can do the same thing over here. Fine. So this is how we have created the basic data type variable. Then we have object and array. So object also we can create, but I will create the object and array once we come to the forms and the array for loop. Fine. So till now you just focused on this. This is how you create the variable. Now we have created a variable, right? Now let's say this variable, whatever the data I'm holding into this variable, I need to display in my HTML. Now in this HTML, role component.html, whatever the variable you declared over here, only you can access this. Okay, what I mean to say, if I write paragraph and inside this, now data bind, we are moving towards the data binding. We have created variable. In that variable, we have stored some data. Now that data we need to display it somewhere. Na? So we are moving towards that. So whatever the variables we have created over here, that data we need to display into our HTML template. So we can make use of interpolation. So interpolation will be double curly braces like this. Now inside this, we can access our variable. So you can see once I press control space, whatever the variables I create, those are automatically suggested. So first name I will try. Let's save. Let's save. Now this role component we have already rendered into app component. So it will render. So here you can see Angular tutorial is getting printed. Got it? So if you only know the JavaScript, if we have to show value into this from this variable into p tag, so what we normally do, we give the ID, we select it, then by dot inner HTML or by inner text, we provide the value. But over here, you can simply do like that. Okay, so that is the advantage. What do we get when we work with Angular? If we have to show some value which is having which is there in some variable, it's very easy to print the value by using interpolation. This is what we call as a interpolation. Fine. Now let's try another also. So this is string value what we have printed. Then let's print the version that is having roll number. Sorry. Let's save. So it will print the 18. Just like that, you can print Boolean and the data type current date also. Let's print the current date. So if you see the current date, let's try to print it. What data you get in the current date? See, current date has current date, time, time zone, everything. So when you write new date, you get whole object of the date, and it has everything, including date, time, and the time zone also. Fine. So this is interpolation. Now, before we move ahead, let's install the Bootstrap so that I will create the proper UI also. Okay, let's close everything. Now, when we created the project, we got this package.json, right? Now I need to install Bootstrap into my project. So how do we install that? So for that, we need to visit npm portal, npm.js. So we need to search which package we need to install. Bootstrap. So Bootstrap. Let's search. No, something wrong. Bootstrap. So Bootstrap. Okay. Bootstrap current version might be 5.3 something. So let's see what is the current version they have. 5.3.3. Now this is nothing but a package. If I want to install this package, I have to use this command npm I bootstrap. Let's copy, and we have to open a new terminal and we have to paste it over here. So this will install Bootstrap into my project, and it will add an entry over here also. So just pay attention. You can use material also, Tailwind also, whatever the UI framework you want, you can do like the same thing. Just like I have been using Bootstrap. So you can see it is saying added 2 packages. And here you can see Bootstrap entry has been added. Okay. Now we have installed the Bootstrap, but how do we use that? So whatever the external libraries which you are using, to use it into the project, you need to register that into your angular.json. As I said in the beginning, angular.json is our architectural file. Okay, so here you can see style section is there. Let me just get that file path. So this is the file path, you will have it and you need to use it over here. Then only you can use it. Now again, remember one thing, whenever you make changes to your angular.json, you need to rerun your Angular project. So I'm just stopping it by Control C. I'm just killing the terminal. CLS, again, I need to run it. ng-serve, enter. So it will again recompile the project. So let it recompile. So it looks the same. Now, if I want to check like if Bootstrap classes are working, what I will do, I will create a row call structure over here, row dot call, let's say 3. And after that, again, we will have call 3. In first column, I will paste this. In second column, I will paste this. Again, let's have a third column and I will paste this over there. So just a greeting I am using. Now, if you see, I'm getting side by side, means my Bootstrap classes are applying. Let me show you that also. If we inspect call 3, you can see from Bootstrap, that particular class is coming, means our Bootstrap is installed and we are able to use it also. Fine. Now, so we were at the data binding. So we have started the data binding. From that, we have seen interpolation. Now, this is interpolation. One more way of data binding is, let me just write call 3. Let's have a text box. Input type text class form control. Fine. So we have a text box. Let's see if it is rendering. Yeah. So we have a text box. Now what I need to do, whatever the value I have in this variable, I need to bind it to this text box. So what I can do, I can use property binding. So square bracket, property binding. I need to provide the value type. Value attribute is there for the text box. So over here, I can pass the variable. So this was the property. Whatever the property you want to, whatever the value you want to provide to any property, you just wrap it inside the square bracket. So now if I save, that text box will render with that value. See, got it? This is how you do the property binding. Let's take one more example, call 3. Now what I will do, let's just open the .ts and .html side by side so you can see both the code. Now just pay attention. So these are the various variables we have created. Input type. I'm creating a variable with data type string, and here I'm assigning value radio. Fine. Now, how do we create the input type? So input is there. Now I need to provide dynamic type. So square bracket type equal to double quote, and I will pass this input type over here. So just pay attention now what happens. So in this variable, what I have? Radio. So you will be able to see the radio button. Got it? If I say checkbox, you will be able to see the checkbox. Got it? If I say button, you will be able to see the button. So what are the properties? What are the attributes you have to all the element? Even this class also we can make it dynamic by wrapping it inside the square bracket. So this is interpolation. When you will use interpolation, when inside any element, you just need to print the data. But let's say if you want to provide a value to any property, so you will wrap that property into square bracket. So this is interpolation. This is property binding. One more way is, now the third way is by two-way data binding by using ng model. But before that, I will explain why do we need that. So now this variable name is first name. So this first name variable we have binded over here and over here also. Now if I change the variable value, text box value, it's not reflecting over here, right? What I need to do, once I change the variable value, that whatever the value I type into that text box, that value should get assigned to that variable also. Getting it? Whenever I'm typing a value into the text box, that value should get stored into that variable also. So to do that, this is two-way data binding. Once I start, whatever the value I have in that variable, text box will render. Once I change the text box value, that value gets stored into that variable also. So this is two-way data binding. To achieve this, we have a way, that is by using directive. So how do we do that? So to use two-way data binding, first we need to import a module, that is forms module. So in the import section, in this particular component, we need to import forms module. You can see it is suggesting once I type forms. If you click on it, it will add the import also. Right? Then let's create one more text box. Type text. And here I need to use the ng model. So square bracket, inside square bracket, we need to use round bracket. That is what we call banana bracket. Ng model, M is capital, N is small, equal to, you need to pass a variable over here. So this variable I'm passing it over here. So see, we have two text box. First text box, we have binded the same variable by using property binding. And second text box, again, we have binded the same variable, but with the data type, ng model. So now just see the difference. If I'm changing value over here, nothing is happening. But if I change value over here, it's reflecting everywhere. Wherever I'm using that variable, it's rendering over there also. React. See, here also it is rendering, here also it is rendering. Because once we change the variable value of the, once we change the value into this text box, it will change the variable value also. And this variable, we are using it over here and over here. So that's why new value it is rendering. So that is two-way data binding. Okay. So where can we use two-way data binding? Only on the input element. You cannot use ng module over here. Display element you cannot use, only on the input element. Just we have used the text box, right? Let's try one more. So dot call 3. Here I will create one more variable. Selected state colon data type string is equal to by default empty. Fine. And this variable I will bind it to the drop down. Let's create a select. Inside select we will have option. Let's say MH. Let me just copy paste. MH, Maharashtra, then MP, Madhya Pradesh, and Goa. So 3 states I have in the dropdown. Now what I need to do, I need to bind this variable to this dropdown. So on the select, you will bind it square bracket, round bracket, ng model equal to your variable. So variable means this variable you need to bind it over here. And let's print this variable also in the last column. I will create one more column, call 3, and here I will print the variable. So just see what happens. So by default, we are not able to see anything over here. Once I change MP, see variable value get updated. Whatever the drop-down value I select, that value is getting assigned to my variable. So this is how two-way data binding works. So in data binding, we have 3 topics: interpolation, property binding, and two-way data binding. ng model you will use in all the input element, not the display element. Display element, you will use just the interpolation. For input element, you can use this also, property binding. And for display element, you can use property binding also. But ng model means two-way data binding you will only use on the input element, not the display element. Fine. So this is done. Data binding is done. Let's just list down also like what is done. Setup and installation is done. Then we have data binding. Fine. So data binding is done. Now, sorry, it is not done. One more thing is remaining. So when we talk about data binding is like showing the data into the HTML. But there is one more way is also event binding. Okay. So data binding, after data binding, the next topic is event binding. How do we write the event? So in JavaScript, you might have written like, let's say you have a button. On click of button, you just need to show the pop-up or something. So what you do, on click and you pass the function. Now, how do you create a function in your component? So these are the variable. So after variable, you can create a functions. So this is just a standard. Whenever you work on an industrial project, variable should be at the top. Then you will have constructor. Then you will have engine it. Then you will have your normal function. We will come to the constructor and engine it. But let me just cover how do you create the functions. So in TypeScript, you can create function like this. Let's say show welcome alert. This is my function name, then round bracket and curly bracket. That's it. This is how you create the function in TypeScript. So this is your function name, then round bracket and the curly bracket. This is a normal function. What if I have to create a function with parameter? Show message round bracket. And here we need to pass the parameter. But as we are working with TypeScript, so every time we need to document, provide the data type. So string and then curly bracket. This is how you create a normal function. This is a function which has some parameter. And we can return some value also. Fine. Now, so this function over here, we will say alert. Sorry. And we want to show the information. Let's say welcome. Angular 18 tutorial. Let's save. And here we will show alert, whatever the message we get, parameter value over here like that. So we have 2 functions into our role component. First is without any parameter. Second is with parameter. Now, if I need to call this function on some button click, so what I can do, let's create one more row, call 3. Let's create a button. So button, let's add a Bootstrap class, btn success. And here on this button click, we will say show alert. So on this button click, we need to call this function. So how you write that? Event will go into round bracket. What will be the event click? So in JavaScript, we have on click, here just the click. And in double quote, we need to pass the function. So remaining is same. How do you know from the JavaScript? Like this. So now if I clicked on this button, see, my function is getting called, and in that function, I have a simple alert. So that alert is visible. Fine. So this is how you call the function. Let's create another column and let's try to call the second function. Let me just copy. Sorry. So here, show react message. Now we will call this function over here. Now this function needs a parameter. See, it is throwing the error because it needs a parameter. So we cannot call a function directly. So we need to pass the parameter. String type of data we need to pass. Okay, welcome React. We will just copy paste one more time. And here say show .NET message. And here we will pass .NET. So here you can see on the remaining two buttons, we are calling this function, a function with the parameter. So while calling this function, we have to pass some value also. So let's just test it also. So if we click on React, you are able to see the message what we have sent over here, welcome.net. So this is data binding, interpolation, property binding, two-way data binding using ng model, and then your event binding. So this is the basic of Angular. Fine. Now, so we are done with the data binding. So in data binding, what we have seen, interpolation, that is nothing but curly braces, curly braces. Then we have property binding. That is mean wrapping the property into square bracket. Then we have two-way data binding. That was using ng model. Right? And last one was event binding. These are the topics we have seen till now. Next is, once we are done with the data binding, next we can start with the directives. Directives. Fine. Sorry, let me not close it. Now, when we talk about directives, so directives is a specific term related to Angular. So the meaning will be, it has particular task, it will perform particular tasks. There are so many directives. So just to categorize, we have structural, and second we have attribute. Okay, structural attribute, a directive which is responsible to change the structure of the DOM. That is what we call as a structural directive. An attribute will be a directive which can add extra behavior to the existing element. That will be attribute. So in structural, what we have is ng if, then ng for. These are the directives we have for structural. Then for attribute, we have ng class and we have ng style. Okay. These are the structural directives. So let's get started. Now, we created two components for roles and the designation, right? So we should have created only once. What I will do, I will delete the designation. And now in the role component, what I need to do, okay, we should not have deleted that. Let's create one more component that will be master. Okay. So ng generate component, master component I'm creating. So in app.component, we have rendered our app role component. Now, instead of that, I will render master component over here. Master component. Fine. Let's remove this. We don't need this over here. App master. Fine. So in app component, we are now rendering our master component. Now, in master component, we need to have a bootstrap thing is there. Let me just showcase you bootstrap tutorial. We have button group. Okay. So here you can see multiple buttons are grouped. So let's copy this. And one more component we are going to need. Just like roles, we have deleted that now. Let's create it once again. ng generate component designation. Enter. So master is a component where we are going to render roles and the designation. So what I can do in master component, I will have this HTML. Fine. So now if we save, so here master component is rendering. In master component, we have this button available. Now here I will render here roles, and second will be, what is it? Designation. So see the task now. So meanwhile, we are completing the project also. So we have roles and designation. Let's align it also properly. It should come in the center. So let's add a row dot call 12. Let's put it over there. Let's add a text center. Let's save. So buttons are coming at the center. So what I need to do, once I click on the roles, my role component will be visible over here. And once I click on the designation, my designation component will be visible. So at a time, only one component should be visible. So now here we are going to need ngif. So ngif directive is used to hide and show. It's not hide and show. It's actually insert the element and remove the element from the DOM. So let's see how do we do that. So we have this button. Now inside this component, I'm going to create a variable. So each component will have its own variable. We cannot use variable declared in one component into another component. Fine. Now here we will create a component. Let's say current component. It will have a data type of string is equal to, by default, empty I'm keeping. So I have just created a variable. In this variable, we are going to store like what is the current component activated. Okay. Now this variable, I will use it after this row. Again, I will create a row call 12. Inside this call 12, I will have selector of both the component. So now in master component, I'm going to render designation and role. So let's import that. Designation component and roles component. Fine. Both the component I have imported. Now over here, we will have app-roles like this. Then again, we will have app-designation. Fine. Let's just save and see how it is looking. So now here you can see in the master component, we are able to see whatever we have written in the role component, and here designation component is also available. Fine. But what we need to do, if I click on roles, only role component should be visible. If I click on designation, only designation component should be available. So now we have created a variable. So over here, let's in this variable while creating, we will add roles. Value I'm assigning to this variable. If in this variable we have a value roles, we will render this. So now we need to write, let's or over here, star ng if equal to double quotes. And here we need to specify the condition. If in this variable, I have a value is equal to single quote, I need to compare with this value. So if this variable holds the value this, what I will does, this element will render. Now, if you see, I have some warning. Now from Angular 17, whatever you have to use, you need to import that. So if you have to use the directive, so in your component.ts, you need to import common module because directives will come from this. So now that error might be gone. Okay. So this is one div. Let's add one more div. Now here another ng if. So star ng if. structural directive will start with star. Okay. This is the syntax that this is how you have to use it. Another condition, if in this variable I have value, let's say designation, then I will render this. So app hyphen designation. So see what I have done. I have added a condition to this div. When this div will render, if in this variable we have value this, when this div will render, I will have designation. Okay. Currently in this variable, I have a value role. So see, only role component HTML is visible. If I click on designation, nothing is happening because we didn't write a code for that, right? So let's write a code. So now we have two buttons. So let's create a function, change tab. And this will be a function with the parameter tab name, that too with data type string. So whatever the value we get, that we need to store into this variable. So this dot this is equal to tab name. So we have created a function with parameter, and whatever the value we pass, that we are storing into this variable. Now this function we will call it over here. We have two buttons. So right click event, this function, and while calling this function, we will pass roles, because that is what we have written the code. And in second button, we have to pass the designation. Okay. Now, if we save, we will be able to shuffle back. See, if I click on roles, role tab is visible. If I click on designation, designation is visible. Getting it? So this is how you can do hide and show. It's not hide and show. It's actually removing that particular element from the DOM. And if condition gets true, again, it will display it. Fine. So this is how you use the ng. Then if I click on the roles, this button should be highlighted. If I click on the designation, this button should be highlighted. Let's say a success color, green color. So now you can use ng class over here. So this is a static class, right? So how do we make it dynamic? So let's remove it from over here. Now we can make a dynamic class. So we are using ng class. Attribute directive was there. So ng class is equal to now condition. So if this variable has the value roles, so what I need to do, then ternary operator we need to use. If this condition is true, ternary operator, then this class, otherwise this class. So if this condition gets true, we have to add btn success class, or btn primary class will be there. Now the same we need to copy and put it over here also. Over here, we just need to match with the designation. So see what we did on both the buttons, we have added a condition. Let's just take it down. So on both the button, we have the condition dynamic class. So to add a dynamic class in Angular, we have to use ng class. So if this variable has the value roles, we will add this class, otherwise this class. For this button, if this variable hold designation, we will add this class, otherwise this class. So just see this action. So currently by default role was there. So you can see it has this class. If I click on designation, it is highlighting. So now user knows which tab is selected. Got it? Fine. Now, coming back to the project. Now we have seen two directives. Now next thing is, now I'm not just going with the top typical flow, because we are trying to complete the project also. Now in roles tab, this is what we have seen just to see the data type, data binding. But now in roles component, what we need to do in roles component, we just need to show the roles we have. So this is the API Swagger documentation. How do you test it? You have to click on try it out, execute. So now this is my API. So if we hit this API, let me try to hit it also in the browser. What do we get? We get array object. And inside that object in data property, we get the array. See, array of roles. So this array of role we need to show into my roles component. So for this, we need to make an API call, right? Again, if you are not familiar with the API, like what is API? So just watch any YouTube video, you will get a basic understanding of why we need the API and how API are made. that you will get it clear. Fine. So in role component, we need to make the API call. So if we have to make API call into our Angular project, first thing we need to do is we need to visit our app config component. Now in app config component, we need to register something that is provide HTTP client. It's not coming. Let's add the import first. It will come from @Angular / common, I think. Let's try provide HTTP client. HTTP / HTTP. No, from where it came? Yeah. So this will be the import common / HTTP. So here we need to add it like this, provide HTTP client. Okay. So this is the first thing you need to do. You can just add an import like this. In some time case, once you start wrapping, it will show the suggestion also, but it didn't show. That's why I had to import first. So provide HTTP client. Previous version, we had HTTP client module, but in Angular 18, it got deprecated. Okay. So whenever you are preparing, when someone asks you like what new things are there in Angular 18, so that is also one point. HTTP client module is no longer there. It is deprecated. So means we cannot use it. Fine. So this is the first step. You need in app config, you need to register, provide HTTP client. Then in your component, so our component is role component, correct? So in role component, we have to make the API call. Now here, we have to again see one component that is lifecycle event. So now when we have to make the API call, once this component load, we need to make the API call. And whatever the data we get from the API, that we need to display in the table or somewhere. So once the component load, we have to trigger the API call. Okay, let me just get rid of this, or let's just comment, because this code I will be pushing to a repository. So you can have this as a practice. Okay. Now let's enter. So once this component load or render for the first time, I need to make the API call. So for that, we need to make use of the lifecycle event, that is OnInit. ng OnInit is the lifecycle event. We have so many events, but whatever the events we will be needing, we will be discussing. Okay. So OnInit. Once you import it, you need to implement it. So implement OnInit. Now see, once you implement it now, it will ask you to implement ng OnInit. See, ng OnInit is missing. So let's write the ng OnInit. Okay, this is how your ng OnInit function. So this is a lifecycle event, but it will act as a lifecycle event only when you implement it. Otherwise, it's a normal function if you don't implement it. Fine. Let's just add an alert over here for hi. So this is a normal function, right? But see how it behaves. By default, I'm getting that high. Means once the component load, I will be getting, but this function is automatically executed and this alert box will call. Fine. Now I need to make API call. So let's create a function. Again, separate function I'm killing. Get all roles. Round bracket, curly bracket, enter. Fine. So why we have created a function? For every specific thing, we should have a separate function. That is the rule we are following. So we need to make an API call, and that API call was going to be to get the role. So that's why we have created this function. Now in this function, we have to make the API call. Now to make the API call, we have to make use of the HTTP client library. So we have to create an instance of HTTP client injectable service. So before Angular 16, we used to create a instance of our any service by using dependency injection that was with constructor. Let me showcase you that first. So we used to have a constructor. Since it is a class, so class will have a constructor. Inside constructor, we could register dependencies like that. So private HTTP colon. What is the data type? HTTP client. So we are trying to create an instance of HTTP client service. So we used to create like this. This is what we called as a dependency injection. This is the old way. Now new way is by using inject. So HTTP is equal to inject we have to use. And what we need to inject? Or HTTP client. So this is new way. Both are doing the same thing. Again, in the background, it has some performance optimization and everything, but basically it is doing the same way. We are creating instance of this service, HTTP client is a service which is coming from HTTP client library. Fine. We have not installed it. It is by default integrated into Angular project. So HTTP is equal to inject HTTP client. Now in this function, we have to make the API call. So this will point to the current of class. So inside the current class, we have this variable, right? HTTP dot. Now, when we talk about API call will have get, post, put, delete. These are the normal 4 operation we do. So our API call is the get one. How do you know? So over here, you will be able to see this is get API call. Fine. So that's why HTTP dot get. When we talk about get API call, we have to pass a URL. So here you can see URL. So URL into a data type of string. So let's add a double quote or single quote, anything. Now, what is our URL? This is our URL. So this you are getting from over here. So let's copy this and let's paste it over here. Okay. So this is our API call, but API call won't trigger. Okay. We need to, whatever the data we are going to get from this API is returning, API is going to return some data. So we need to catch that data. So to catch that data, we need to write subscribe method. Subscribe. Round bracket, result, colon, any. I'm writing any, but once we start class and interface, then I will replace them. So this is how you make the API call. This is very basic API call function. Okay. Now, from our API call, what type of data I'm getting? Object. And inside that object, data is the property where I'm going to get an array. Now, this data, I need to store it somewhere. So we need to create a variable. So over here, let's create a variable that will be role list colon any. We are going to get array. So array is equal to empty. Now, as the topic is there, so we are working in TypeScript. So any is a dynamic data type. Any type of data you can hold it over here. But we know what type of data we are going to get. We are going to get a array of this object. So let's create interface. So how do we create the interface? Now to create interface, rather than creating over here, what we will create in app folder, we will create another folder that will be, we will call it as a model. Inside model, again, we will create class and interface. Either we can create class or interface. First, now we are creating interface. So let's say role.ts, a simple TypeScript file. Inside this TypeScript file, I'm going to create my interface. Export interface name I. It's just a standard naming convention. Whenever we are creating interface, we will start the name with I. Role curly bracket. Now, how many properties we have in the object? Role ID. Always try to copy paste. Don't assume. Data type will be number, comma. Then we have role. It will be having data type string. Okay. So this is how you create an interface. Now this interface, you can use it over here instead of any. Now we are using this interface. So we need to add an import for that. So see at the top, we don't have it, but if you click, a suggestion bulb will come. See, import has been automatically added. So instead of while creating a variable, this variable is going to hold an array of objects. So that's why I have created like this. So this is how you create a variable for get API call. If your get API call is going to return array of object. Fine. Now, whatever the response I get, that I need to store it over here. So this dot role list is equal to, in result, I'm going to get an object. Inside that object, I have the data. So res dot data I need to use. Now this function is not going to get called automatically. Let's remove this also, or let's comment it. So this function is not going to get called automatically. We need to call it. When do we need to call it? Once the component load. So that is this function. This function will execute by default. So inside this function, we will call this function. Okay. So let's just see if we are able to make the API call. So if I open it, wait, how the UI is not rendered again? Okay. So now you can see in the network tab, you just go to network and you can just click on this fetch XHR. You can see API call is there, but we are getting some coarse error. Okay. So now why coarse error? My APIs are restricted to particular port number. So if we have to access my API, I need to run the project on some different port. Okay. So let's run the project on different port. So we need to run the project on different port, that is 4209. So how do we run? By default, our Angular application will run on 4200. But if we have to change the port, so ng serve, then hyphen port and the port number which you want to run. So now our application will run on 4209. Then we should get the response from this API. So if we save, let's try the network tab. Let's reload again. So now you can see in the network tab, you are able to see one API call and whatever the response you get. Got it? And now whatever the response we get that we have stored into this variable. Now the data we have in this variable, we need to showcase into the HTML. So now here comes the another directive, that is ng for. Let's open its side. Let's remove this, or let's remove this. We don't need it right now. Let's remove this also. So we have a variable that is role list, and in this variable we have the data whatever we got from the API. Now we need to showcase this data into our component. So what we can do, let's create row call, let's say call for. Now ng for, the purpose of ng was to hide and show, means when we say it, it's hide and show, but actually it's removing and adding an element again and again. Now ng for is to iterate the element, means to create the dynamic element. So let's say we have ul. Okay, inside this ul we need to create dynamic li. Now how many roles are there? That many li we need to create. So let's write li, and this element we need to iterate. So we have to write star ng for equal to double quotes. Again, we are going to use ng for, so we need to import common modulo. New things is also there. I will cover it, but let me just complete the ng basic directives. Now here we need to write let item of. After of, you need to specify your variable, that is role list over here. And here in role, you will get object. So from that object, what you need to display? Just the role. So see, because we have binded this with this interface, so it is suggesting role. So now if we save over here, you can see whatever the roles we got that are visible. Let me showcase you that. So this was our API. So how many roles we were getting from that API, that role we have got, and we have displayed that in the ULLI. So this is how ng for will work. So ng for we have to use whenever we have to iterate some element. Got it? Now, in this case, we have tried li to be dynamic. Let's try one more thing. Inside this call for, we will create an option drop down. And inside this drop down, what we will iterate? Option. So option. So we will star ng for let role of whatever name. This is like creating a variable, so you can give it anything. But after of, you need to provide the variable use which in the component you have. Now, when we talk about option, option will have a value tag also. So that we can use as a property binding. Value is equal to role. To the value, we will bind role ID. But while displaying, we will display the role name. So over here, we will make use of interpolation. So role dot role, we have to display it over here. So if we save, so here you can see we got the role drop down. Let me inspect and showcase you. So here you can see in the option, in the value tag, we got the value. And while displaying, we are displaying the text. Got it? So now a question will be there, like which element we can iterate? Any element, whether it is div, label, span, button, any element you can iterate. See, I'm creating call for, and here I will just iterate the button. So star ng for is equal to let item of our variable name, that is role list. And inside this button, I will showcase the value as item dot role. Let's add the class also. btn warning. So now you can see buttons are dynamic, right? Got it? Let's add MX class. So we will get some spacing. See, so any element which you want to iterate on some particular array, you will use ng for. Got it? So earlier we have seen ngf in the master component. Now we have completed our ng for. So that is nothing but to iterate or to create the dynamic element, we can make use of ng for. Okay. Now, but we don't normally showcase data like this. So what we can do, we will showcase the data because we are trying to complete a project also. So in role, we will we will show the data into the table format. So let's get rid of this. Just have a look at it, how we have done over here. Now, instead of this, we will use the table call, let's say 12. We don't need call 12, but let's say table. Now inside table, we will have T head. Inside T head, we will have TR, TH, let's say serial number. Then second will be our role name. Fine. We don't have API for CRUD operation. So the only gate APIs are there for role and designation. So we are not doing the CRUD operation. When it start with employee, we will do the CRUD operation. Fine. So T head is done. Then we have T body. Inside T body, again, we will have TR and we will need TD over here. So we have two T head. So we will need two TD. Now we need to iterate the rows. So we have to iterate ng this tr because this is what we need to iterate. So star ng for let role of role list. And here so here you can see serial number is there. So now it's like a for loop. So how do we iterate? How do we get the serial number? So we can create one more variable, that is let serial number is equal to, and here we can store index. Okay. Now here in the first TD, we will try to use the serial number, this variable where we have stored the index. And in second TD, we will use role dot role. Let's add a bootstrap class for the table. Table bordered. Let's save. So now you can see we have got the table, but it has not taken, yeah, because spelling mistake was there. Let's save. So you can see whole table is visible, but index started from 0 because whenever we now talk about array, it will start from 0. So we can just increment it by 1. So now it is visible properly. Got it? So we have completed our API call integration with the gate API. This is one way to do the API call. Now we will see another way to do the API call that will be with the service. So we will complete one more topic that will be services. So normally we don't make API call in the component. We have done it also, but normally we don't write the API call into our component. Okay. Now in Angular, we have one more topic, that is services. So what is services? So services are nothing but a class where we can keep our reusable code or a code which or a functions which we are going to use in our overall the project. Okay. So let's create a services. So in app folder, I'm going to create a folder that will be service. Let's make it services plural. Now in this folder, I have to create my service. So let's open an integrated terminal. How do we create the service? Again, just like component, ng generate. Now we have to create the service. So short form will be yes. Let's say master service I will create. Let's enter. So we have created two files, service and the spec.ts. So we have a master service. So service will look like this. So when we create component, in component, we had something like component decorator. See, like this. But in case of service, it is injectable. So as I said, these are decorators. So this is injectable means service decorator. It will have only provided option. In case of component decorator, we have so many options over here. Okay. So with above every class in TypeScript, we will get something that will identify the purpose of this class. So that is nothing but decorator. So this is another decorator that is injectable. Fine. Now, instead of doing, we have another component, right? Designation. So in designation component, we need to call this API. So to call this API, rather than writing the API call function into component, we will write that function into our service. So as you know, to make the API call, first we need to create the instance of HTTP client. So private HTTP HTTP client. You can create the inject also, but as we got the constructor by default, so I'm using that. Get designations function, normal function. Okay. From this function, I'm going to make the API call, and whatever the data I get, that I'm going to return it back. Okay. So I'm going to use return statement. So this dot HTTP dot get API call. Let's get the URL. So let's click on try it out, execute. So here you will get the API. So let's copy. And this we have to put it over here. So you can see what is the purpose of this function? The purpose of this function is to make the API call, and whatever the API call response is there, we are just returning it back. Now this service we have to integrate into our designation component. Fine. So let's create an instance of that service. So master service is equal to inject master service. We need to integrate like that. Fine. Now, again, on the page load, we are going to do that. So we need to import an OnInit. Once we OnInit, then implement OnInit. And once we implement, we need to write. Why it is giving error? Sorry, OnInit we didn't write. Once we implement, we need to implement our ng OnInit function as well. Fine. Now we can directly subscribe into this also. How do we do that? In earlier component, we have created a separate function. In the role component, we have created a separate function, and this function we have called it over here. Now over here, I'm just showing the variation. In the ng OnInit also, you can do the API call function. So this dot master service dot only one function is there, get designation. So we can subscribe because this function is returning observable type of data. So any function which is returning observable, so we can subscribe to that. So subscribe round bracket result colon any arrow function. Now, whatever the data I'm going to get, now here also you can see in roles also we have said any over here. Here also we have said any. As I said, we should not use any. Now all my APIs are going to return same data, this object. And inside this object, I'm going to have three parameters, message, result, data. So let's create an interface for that. So we have already created an interface. So let's create into that only. So inside this file, you can create any number of interface. Okay. It's not like just one interface API model, or it will be response. How many properties we are going to get? Message, which will have data type string. Then we have result, which is having data type Boolean, true or false. And then data. Data is going to be dynamic, so we can keep it any. Sometimes we will get array, sometimes we will get object, sometimes we will get a single value, sometimes we will get number integer array, anything we can get. So that's why it. So wherever we are writing this instead of any, we just have to import our API response model. Now, since we provided API response model data type, no, something is wrong. Okay, here also we need to specify it. So after get, no, but why? If we pass any, it was behaving fine. And just providing API response model, it started giving error. Why it is giving error? Okay, so let's try passing this over here. So we are again specifying like what type of data I'm going to get from this API over here. Okay, then it will work. So now if you see, it is suggesting the properties data. Now in master service also, we need to provide the data type. So this function is there. This is a normal API function, but we are going to use interface. So we need to specify while returning what type of data we are going to return. So observable. So observable, that too of type this model. Let's import that. And once we say over here also we need to provide the data type. So this should be your API call. These are the API call which you will get to see in the industrial project. This is the standard code. Fine. Now into our designation component here, instead of any, we can use our API response model. We need to import it. Now, just like in the roles also, we have created one variable. So here also designation list colon. So we created an interface for role. Just like that, we need to create an interface for designation also. So export I designation. Let's see what type of data we are getting, that we will put it over here. Designation ID and designation. Fine. Let's create it. Let's use it over here. We are going to get array of this. Initialize it with empty. Let's add the import also. And whatever the data we are going to get, that we will hold it over here. This dot designation list is equal to result dot data. So whenever we write the API call subscribe now, this is our success call. If API call is success, this will execute. But if error, what if we come across any error or API got failed, so we need to have an catch block also, error block also, like this. Okay, so you should have error block like this, and you can show the alert like API error or network down. Something error, generic error you need to show. So this should be your proper API call. Subscribe callback for the success, and this for the error. Fine. And whatever the data we are going to get, that we are storing it over here, designation. Now this data we need to show it in the HTML also. So in the role component, we have shown the data in the table format, but in the designation, we will show it in the card format. So you will have the idea, like it's not just in the table, we will show the data. Let's use the Bootstrap card. Bootstrap tutorial. Where is the card? So this card. So we will use, where is the card? Like this. So this example we will use. So let's copy it. Now over here, let's create a row call 3 and we will put it over here. Now this we need to iterate. Fine. Now we are going to see the next concept. Control flow statement that we have got from Angular 17. It was not there earlier. From Angular 17, we have got control flow statement. So what is the control flow statement? So in master component, you remember we have used ngif, right? So this is using directive. One more way is by using @if and @for. Now in this role component, we have shown the data by using ngif for directive. So directive will work on the particular element. Now we are going to use another for loop, so that will look like this. So I need to iterate call 3. So inside this, I will use @for loop. So this is like normal for loop, which you are familiar. Here we have to specify the array name. So that is designation list. So this is control flow statement. And this is the element, whole element we have to iterate. So this will go inside the for loop. Let's save and check if we are able to iterate. Now, there is a catch. If you have to use ngif for an ngif, you need to import this common module. But if you have to use ngif for loop and @if now, you don't have to import anything. So obviously this is good. You are not importing something, right? So let's see. Why it is giving error, some file I think we didn't save. Let's click on save all. Now if we move back to the designation, you can see why it is taking full width. It should not, no? Row is there. Okay, call is missing. Now it should work fine. So see, it has created 3 cards because from the API, we have just got 3 designation. Got it? But this is a static data. Let's make it dynamic. So here we will show item dot. See the The advantage of creating interface, you will get intelligence of the properties. We don't have anything over here or here also, but let's keep it as edit and delete. We don't have any operation, but let's keep it. Let's save. So here you can see we have got the data. Okay, fine. So this is how we are done with one more topic, that is @for loop. Just like @for loop, we have @if also. Okay, we will see once the scenario came @if. Let's close everything. So till now we have seen what is data binding, event binding, how do we make the get API call, what is, how do we create the interface, what are services, basic things we have done. Now, in the app component, we have rendered our master component, correct? But this is not how we are going to do. We have to create the routes. Okay, so now comes the route. So in our in app folder, we have got a file that is approute.ts. So here we have to create the routes. So when we say about routes, a route is nothing but an object. Okay, so object, it will have path colon, then path means URL. What will be the URL? So first I'm creating a default route, empty. Then if it is empty, if we don't have anything in the URL, if we don't have anything in the URL, where we have to navigate? So redirect to colon, let's say where master we need to redirect, and path my strategy with full value. Fine. So this is our default route. In redirect to, previously we used to pass only the route name, but now we can pass the function also. This is new thing what we have got in Angular 18. Just make a note of it while I'm explaining. New things are in Angular 18. So first was that, what was it? I also forgot now. HTTP client module is deprecated, and second thing is in redirect function. In redirect to, we can write the function also. Now we have to create our route for master. So master. Now we have to specify once if you have something master in the URL, which component we need to render. So master component. We are not going to create the routes for designation and the roles because these two components we are using in the master component. Okay, let's save. So we have created routes. Let's create two more components. So after designation, we are going to need employee also. So let's create employee component. ng generate component employee. Then we are going to need client also. So let's create client component. So now we have several components. So we will create a route for the same also. So let's copy, paste, paste. This will be master. Let's say employee. Here we will render employee component. Then we have client. Here we will render client component. Fine. So once I select, import has been automatically added at the top. So this is how we have created the routes. Now, so we have created the routes, but when we say navigation, so we need to have a navbar. So let's use the Bootstrap navbar. Let's go over here. Where is the navbar? Let's use this one. I will just inspect and let's copy the HTML code because ultimately we are going to need the login and the logout button. So that's why I'm using this. Let's edit. Let's copy. And this navbar, we will put it into the app component because that is the parent component what we have. Now, let's remove this selector. Now, if we save, let's save all. Now here you can see we have got the navbar. Okay, let's remove this margin. So we have the navbar. Now what we need to do, if you see, if we don't have anything in the URL, it is redirecting to the master. So if master is there, our master component should load, but it's not loading right now. It's not rendering. So to render that in our app component, we need a Routeroutlet. So Routeroutlet is a directive which is responsible to render activated route. Means whatever the URL we have in the over here, that component it will render. See, now we have the rules and the master component is there. Got it? Let's just add a container. And inside container, we will put this. But still we need some padding. Let's add a padding. PT1. Let's save. So now we have the padding. Got it? And above here also we need some padding. So that will be in the master component. PT2. So you see, we have designation and the role component also, but we didn't create the route. So we create the routes of the component. Those component route we will create, those we want to access by URL, because roles and the designation component are going to be rendered into master component. So we are not going to render this component by the route. So that's why we didn't create a route for the role and the designation. Okay. Now, let's use the @ if also. So now if you see, let me just slow the network. Let's open the inspect, and in the network tab, let's slow the internet speed. Okay. Now what we need to do over here, you can see no throttling is there. Here I'm setting slow 4G. Okay. If I select slow 4G, and now if I click the designation tab, see, still it is, let's try 3G. Yeah, now it is taking some time. Now if I redirect to designation, see API call is in progress. Still API call is in progress. Now till that we need to show the loader. And once the data is there, then we will show this card. So how do we do that? So we can use a loader. In Bootstrap, we have a loader. Let's use that. I think that we call it as a spinner. So let's use this spinner. And I want to explain that in how do we write @ if also. So in designation. Fine. Now we will create a div that will be dot call -12. Let's format. So now this is a div. Let's save. So now let it reload. In designation component, you can see the loader is visible. But when we need to show this loader, if API call is in progress, there we need to show the loader. And once we get the data, we need to hide the loader and then data will be visible. So how do we do that? So for that, let's create a variable. So that variable will be like is loader, that too with Boolean value is equal to true. By default, we will make it true. And this variable, we have to use it over here. So @if, directly we can pass the condition. Means if this variable is true, or you can write like this also. True. But by default in this variable, we have the true value. So there is no point to compare also, but let keep it as it is. So if this variable is true, we will show the loader over here. Let's add text center class. So if loader is true, this curly bracket will execute and this UI will render. And @else. So this is very familiar to you. How do you write the if and else? Just like that, but you just need to use @. And if loader is false, we will show the data. So this for loop, we will put it over here. Okay, so see, your UI will look like this. Got it? If condition and else condition, and in else condition, again, we have the for loop. So let's save. But by default, we set this variable true. When do we have to make it false? Once we get the data. Over here also, we need to make it false. And if we face the error, then also we make to make it false. So at the page load, we have set this variable true. Once we get the data, we make it false. So see now, let's open network tab and let's make it slow. Now, if we redirect, if we open the designation component, see loader is visible. And once we get the data, loader is hidden and the data is visible in the card. So this is the actual project thing. Whenever we work on a project, we show the loader like this. So we have used @for and @if also. So this is what we call as a control flow statement. Let's add it to the topic what we have done. Directives we have done. Then we have control flow statement. That is @if @for. Just like that, we have @switch also. Okay. If we have a scenario, we will write that also. Switch also is switch, which is also there. Fine. Then we have seen routing also. How do we implement routing? How to create routes. Router outlet we have seen. Okay. Now, how do we navigate? So we have created certain routes. Over here, see, we have master employee and we have added the navbar also. So in normal HTML, if we have to navigate from one page to another, we use href. But in Angular, we have to use RouterLink. So before using RouterLink, we need to import it also. Everything you need to import RouterLink. Okay. So we have imported RouterLink. So now we can make use of RouterLink like this equal to slash. Let's say first will be master. So what is our route name? So whatever the routes name you have given, that you need to provide it over here. Let's copy. This is one way to do it. Another way is you can just do like this also. And you need to provide like this. Either you can do directly like this, or you can do the property binding also. And here you need to provide the route name employee. But you just need to provide it in a single quote. Okay, when you have to provide the variable value, you will use this. Otherwise, you can like this. And third one is the client. Employee. Let's save all and let's check if we are able to navigate properly. So here you can see we have got 3 tabs. Currently we are in the master. If we click on the employee, you see employee component, client, again master. So we are able to navigate. Got it? Now, if you see, even if we on the employee, this master is only highlighted. So we have one more way to add a dynamic class. So that is router. What is it? I forgot. Active. What is it? RouterLink, no? Let me search. I also forgot this. Let's see what was it? Okay, RouterLinkActive. Fine. Okay, again we need to import it also. RouterLinkActive. Fine. Now then we can use RouterLinkActive. That's why it was not suggesting. So what we need to add? Active class. So currently active class was here. Let's remove it and let's add it over here. And this same thing I will add it to all the links. Now if we save, no, something, yeah, it's behaving. So here you can see this client is activated. No, it's not activated. Let's see why not. Active is there, but we have added that single quote now. That's why it's not behaving. We'll just remove it. It's like whatever the current activated route is there now, it will add this class to that particular link. So see, client is highlighted. If we click on employee, employee is highlighted. Got it? So you can directly write this also. Whatever the activated link is there, the client is activated. So client link is activated. Means nothing but it has added that particular class. See, active class is added. But if you see the other one, it doesn't have that class. Only nav link is there. If we click on the employee, you can see it has added that active class over here. So this is another thing. Fine. So we have done with router link and router link active. Okay. So these are the various topics we have done. Next is we will first start with the CRUD operation for the client. I would have started with employee, but employee has so many fields, so it will take time to design the form. Okay, so we will simply go with the client. Client has very less field. Fine. So let's start with the CRUD operation. We'll complete CRUD operation with the API call we have to do now. And now we will start the CRUD operation of the client. So this is the component which we are going to use. Now, before starting it, so whenever we have to achieve the CRUD operation, first thing we should do is design the UI. So let's design the basic UI. So I'll be using card structure to design it. So row dot call, let's say call it. Inside the call it, I'm going to have again card dot card header dot bg success. Let me just write it complete, then you will understand the flow overall. Client list, and over here we will have card body, and inside card body we will show the table. So we have call it, inside this call it we are going to show the table, and over after call it we have call for, and in call for we are going to have the form. So new client. So here we are going to have the table. So let's create a table. Let's reuse the basic thing. We have already created it over here. So let's copy. Let's paste it over here. Fine. Now, if we see this is the form table we are going to have, then we need the form. So if we see the API, so this is the add new update API client. I think we have the same API for add and update. Yeah. So we don't have any specific API for update. This only API will decide if it is if we pass client ID as a 0, it will create. And if we pass client ID, existing client ID, so it will update. Fine. So these are the fields we should have: contact person name, contact name. So let's design the form for that. So over here, row call 6. In call 6, I will have label. Let's say name, and we will have a text box also, input, type text, class form hyphen control. Fine. So what things we have in the form? So let's say contact person name. Let's open it side by side. Let's quickly design the form also. So let me just copy paste this. Now we have contact person name. So let's add the label over here. Then we have company name. Then we have address. So before address, let's add a city. Then we have pin state. Let's use the state. Then we have pin code. After pin code, we need the address. So address is normally a long text, right? So for that, we will use text area. So instead of type, we will use text area. And same thing, class also we will add it. Address is there. Then we need the employee strength. How many employees that particular company has. Then GST number, contact number, and the registration number. So contact number is kind of a repetitive or no. So this contact number, we will put it over here after the name. Contact number, it will go over here. Then GST number and the registration number. These two things we can have: GST number and the registration number. Registration number and the GST number. So let's save and check if we are able to see the proper form client. So you can see our form is properly visible. Now we just need a save and a cancel button. So let's just add that also. After this row, again, we will add a column, call 6. We will have a button, class, btn, success, hyphen. It will be, let's say, save client. And one more button we will be needing to reset it. Reset. And that will have, let's say, secondary class, the gray button. So you can see we got the button. Let's add some padding PT2. Let's add text center class. Fine. So our form is looking proper. Now we need the table also. Let's add the table. Let's see from the API how many data we are getting. Get all client. Let's see if we have the already some data present or not. Yeah, we have some data. So what are the fields we have in the add object that only we are getting? So let's show some of it. So let's say role is there. Instead of role, let's say contact person name. Then we have company name. First should be a company name. Then we have contact number. So let's copy. Always try to follow some proper way whenever you are working on any CRUD operation. Designing UI is also the best. And what else we can have? City. That's it. So some column we will show. It's not mandatory that whatever the data you are going to get from the API, all you need to showcase. Limited also you can show. Then we have TR and that many TD we will need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 columns, 5 headings. So we have 5 TD. Let's save. So our UI is looking like that. So our UI is done. Next part is we need to create the interface, correct? So now I will explain the shortcut. So writing everything is very tedious. So we can do, we have a website that will do that work for us. Convert JSON to TypeScript class. Let's open any, let's put it over here. So you can see we have got the TypeScript interface. So let's copy it. Now here comes, we should create an interface or the class. So whenever we are creating an object which we are going to bind to the form, so we have to go for the class. So in model, let's create a client class, client.ts, and inside this export class, class name is, let's say, client, curly bracket. These are the properties which we have. Now we have these properties. Let's format it. So currently everywhere property we are getting the error. That's because we have created a class. So these are the properties which are in the class. So we need to initialize it. So we can have a constructor. It's a class. So we can have access to the constructor. This dot, whatever the properties we have. Client ID we have to initialize with 0. That is because that is primary key. Then remaining property we need to initialize. Employee strength again we will initialize to 0. Let me just initialize all the properties like this. Here you can see I have initialized all the properties like that. Whatever the basic initialization you need to do, you can do like that. Why this employee strength is coming in capital? It should be in the small case. Let's see. Okay, from API only, but doesn't matter, make it small only. Okay. All the properties should follow the Pascal case. So employee strength. Fine. So whatever the basic initialization of the field you need to do, you can do it over here. So we have created our class. Now, next thing into our .ts, what we need to do, we need to create the instances of the object we are going to need. So first variable we are going to need is client object. That too with data type client. That is nothing but the class. So see, import it is suggesting, let's click. Now it's a class. So we have to initialize like this. We have to create a new instance of that class, so that our constructor will get executed and whatever the properties we have, that will be properly initialized. So that is the way, that is the reason why when we are going to create a variable which we are bind to the form, we create class, we don't create interface, because initializing interface, it's very tedious, but initializing class, it's very easy. In a single place, we can do it. Fine. So we have done this. Then we have to use one more variable, client list. That too with data type this only, empty. So we have created our two variable. Now this variable we need to bind. Now we are going to see the template form. Okay. So this variable, this object we need to bind to our form. So for that, let's open it at side by side. Now here we need to bind the form, and we are going to do the form with template form. So we have to make use of the forms module. So forms module, and here you have to write square bracket round bracket ng model and should be in the small case is equal to double quotes. What we need to bind? Client object dot. So this is going to be common in all the input elements. So what I will do, I will search input type text, or let's search in class, and I will replace that with this. So just in one go, I will do everywhere same thing. Fine. We just need to bind the property. So this is contact person name. Then we have company name. Then we have contact number. Then we have city. And here we have state. And here we have pin code. Then employee strength. Address. We just need to bind the properties now. GST number. Registration number. Fine. So we have created object. That object we have bind to our form also using ng model. Now, on click of save, we need to call our API. So click on save client. Let's create this function again. So let's close this. Now API call again. We have already created a service, right? So for service we have created is the master. Now we have to deal with the client. So we can create another service also, or we can write all the API call in a single service also. But just we should be familiar, like we can create multiple service. So that's why I'm creating service client. Sorry, spelling mistake is there. So it will create client service, and all the API call related to client will go into this client service. Again, we need to create instance of our API call, HTTP client. Now, how many API calls are there related to client? Let's see. So get all client, get API, add update for this, and the delete. Only 3 API calls are there for now. So let's create it. So this first API call, that will be get API call, round bracket, curly bracket, enter. Now, this function is going to return a data type of particular model. So observable, what type of data? Client class. Let's add it. Then return this dot HTTP dot get. What we need to pass? The URL. Now see, one more topic I will be explaining. Everywhere we are going to need this URL. So this URL is going to constant, just the method name is going to change. So in everywhere we cannot put API like this. This is kind of a repeated, no? Right? If we put our URL everywhere like this is repeated. So instead of this, if we have something which is we are going to need overall project, either we can put that like environment specific detail, means this is API environment specific. So we can put it into environment folder. So previously environment folder used to be by default created, but now we have to install it. So to install environment folder, just open a new terminal, and this common part will go over there. So ng generate environments. Let's enter. So it will create environment folder. Let's wait. So you can see it has created 2 file and it has updated angular.json. Again, I said angular.json is an architecture file. So if we are creating environment folder, that need to be registered into angular.json. So that what it has done. So see, somewhere it will be there. File replacement. Fine. So environment folder. So this is just a constant file. So here we will put our API URL. So common part. So common part is this up till over here. So this we can put it over here. So we have got the environment and environment development.ts. So in both the constant file, we need the same. Sometimes when we work on the development, we have the dev API. So dev API, we put it over here, and the production API, we will put it over here. But the constant name should be same. Fine. Now, so over here, now we don't need to write like this over here. So we need to use environment folder. So environment dot API URL plus. So now my API URL will come from over there. Okay. Now we just need to provide the client like this. So this will be our API call. So environment folder we use normally to store the environment related constant things like API URL, mail URL, S3 bucket, blog URL, image URL, right? Environment specific detail we will store. It's just a normal constant file, but we overall project need and specific to different environment, we will put it over here. Fine. Let's close it. Let's close this. Then our get all. So let's create all the API call. Get all, then add update API call. That will be post. Post API call needs two parameter, URL and the object. So comma, we will need object. We are going to get object of client, and this object we will pass it over here. So delete add for this is the same function for add and update, and one we have for the delete. So that is with delete, and we need to pass the URL. So let me just show you how URL should be. So this URL should be like this. So let's copy. Let's paste it over here. This will have a parameter only ID number, and this ID we will pass it over here. So plus ID. This will be delete client by ID. Fine. So we needed 3 API calls, so that we have done. Fine. Now, in case of delete, I think we are going to return this type of data. So over here, how did we write that? Sorry, here we need to return this now. API response model. Let's write it over like this. Oh, why it is not copy pasting? API response model, because my API response model is like that. Let's import it. Fine. So we have created our client service on all the 3 API call we have done. Now we just need to integrate this into our component. So on the page load, again, if we have to call the data on the page load, so we need to implement OnInit. Let's implement OnInit. Once we implement, it will ask us to implement ng OnInit. Correct? Let's create one more call, load client. Fine. Now in this function, we have to load the client. So how do we do that? This dot master service. Okay, sorry, client service. We need to create instance of our client service. Inject, and what we need to inject? Client service. This. Okay. Now we need to make the API call. So this dot client service dot which API call? Get all client. Result. Sorry, round bracket result API response model. We have created already a variable where we have to store the data. So this dot client list is equal to res dot wait dot subscribe, we forgot, is equal to res dot data. We need to write, and this function we have to call on the page load. So this dot ng OnInit. Fine. And on save API call, we need to write our API call for the save. So this dot client service dot which API call? Add update. So we need to call this result API response model. Now this is the save API. So in case of save, update, and the delete, you need to write a specific code. You need to write if else block. Result dot result is true if API call is success. This is regarding with my API only. Why I'm forgetting subscribe. And add update API call needs an object. Add object nothing but this object, because this only we have binded to the form. So this dot client object we need to send. Fine. If result is true, from the API call, we got the result property as true. So we will show the alert blocks like client created success. And in else, if from API we get the error, we will get the error in the message property. So res dot message. Fine. Let's just add a debugger. We have not added the validation. First, I will complete the basic CRUD, then we will see the validation. So on the end, once API call is success, then again we need to call the get load API so that latest client will be visible to the table. And we need to bind the data over here also. Now, instead of using ng for, we have to use for @for loopings, because that is the new thing you should be aware. Now client list, and this tr we have to iterate over here. We get the index, we need the serial number, so index we can make use. Again +1 because it will start from the 0. Now at a time I can type over all the rows like this, item dot. You just click on the mouse scroller and drag and drop. Okay. So here what we need to show, company name, then we have person name, then we have contact number, and lastly we have city. Fine. So let's save, let's save, let's save. Let's save and check if we are able to make the data in the API call. Yes. So 3 records are visible, but I think we have done something wrong. Let's reload and check the data. No throttling. So, okay, designation. Why designation API call is there in client? Get all client. Okay, get all designation. We didn't change the API call. Let's update the API method name. Get all client will go over here. Then we have add update. So we have only single API, which will be responsible to add and update also. Okay. In some scenario, you will have separate API for update also. Fine. Let's just save and check now. So on the page load, we should have get all client. So see, get all client API is there. And from API, we have got around 9 clients. So those 9 clients are visible in the table. Got it? Whatever the details we have displayed, it is visible also. Fine. Now we have to create a new client. So currently we just have now 9 client. And now we have to create new client. So form is already there. Now we just need to test it. So person name, let's say PPP, company name, Accenture. Let's contact number 1112233. City, Pune. State, MH, pin code 000000. Address something, employee strength, let's say 20. GST number, something, registration number. So I have not added the validation. Okay. So now, once we click on the save client, oh, client created successfully, sign. So API call is there. So see, and after the API call, you can see get all client API call is also there. So this API call was success, and whatever the information we filled into the form that got into the payload with client ID 0 because it was a primary key. And we got the data created. So you can see at the last, we have the record 10. So we have created the new record. Now, how do we update it? Existing record, we need to update it also. And once we create, we need to reinitialize the form also. So reinitialize means we just need to reinitialize this object. So this dot client object is equal to new client. So what it will does, it is just creating an object of that class. So it will call the constructor and it will reinitialize all the fields. Fine. Now in the table, we should have update and the delete button. So let's add one more column over here. TH action. And in TD also we need 2 buttons, one button for edit class btn primary. It will be for edit and one more button for the delete. I will just explain the delete first because that won't take much time. Delete. So now if we see the delete API, what we need to pass? Just the ID. Which client you need to delete, that primary key you need to pass. So from here, we will call a function. So click on delete and we will pass item dot client ID. Client ID we need to pass. Let's create this function. Again, API call will be same. So I'm just going to copy paste this structure. Just we need to change the method, delete client by ID, and while calling this function, I'm going to pass the parameter ID colon number, and this ID I will pass it to this function as a parameter. Client deleted success, and again we will load the client. But In case of delete, we need to ask for the confirmation. So for that, we will create a local variable. Constant is delete. We can make use of that confirm box, and here we can pass the message. Are you sure want to delete whatever the message you want to display? So we will get that pop-up box with OK and cancel. If user clicked on OK, in this variable, we will get true. If it is true, then only we need to write the API call. If it clicked on cancel, we don't need to do anything. So that's it. So let's save and check. Now just pay attention. If we try to delete the Infosys, which is having third record, delete, we get OK and cancel. If we click on cancel, you get to see nothing happen. But if we click on delete, you will be able to see why 404. Client stripe, delete client by client ID, question mark client and 404. Why it is saying 404? Our URL should be like this now. Let's try. This is Swagger URL. And what is the our URL? This one. Let's try. Okay, it is not get. If you see the API, it is delete. So instead of get in the service, we need to make it delete. So I did copy paste, so that's why I forgot it. Let's try it now. So now if we click on the Infosys delete and if we click on OK, now you can see success. And once API call is success, again, we are getting the one more API call. So that record got removed. Let's delete the SCL one. See, that also got removed. So that is the delete. Delete is very easy. Now in case of edit, so once we click on edit, first we need to get this data and populate over here. Then we will do the update. Okay. So for edit, what we will do, we will call one function, click on edit round bracket. What we need to pass? Whole object we need to pass. So let's create this function. So while calling this function, we are passing the whole object. Fine. And that whole object, we need to catch it over here also. That two of data type client. And this data, we have to assign it to the client object because this object we have binded to the form. That's it. So now if we click on the edit, you will be able to see the particular data. See, on whatever the record I click, that record is available over here. And the same API, because for save and update, we have the same API. And on the same button, we have already the API call integrated. Just if it is in the update mode, instead of save, we will show the save button. How do we know like it is an update? If we have the client ID. So here we will use interpolation. If client object dot client ID is not equal to 0, then this message, otherwise this. So if client ID is not equal to 0, then we need to show update text, update client or save client. So just message, sorry, button title, we are making it dynamic. So just pay attention. So by default, once page load client ID is 0, so we get save button. If we click on the edit, you can see update button. Okay, let's change mobile number to 000000 on click of update. Client created success, but it is actually update. See, got it? So this is how you completed the CRUD operation with very basic. Okay. Now we need to implement the validation. So how do we validate this form? So what we need to do, we have to create template variable. So here it will be like hash, that is person name. In this first template variable, we have to store ng model like this. Then after the text box, we will have one more div with text danger class. And here we need to now rules, validation rules. Let's say this is required. So we will add required over here. Fine. Now here we need to show the validation. So let's add a span. This is required message. Fine. Let's just save and check. So now here you can see this is required is coming, but if we provide the value, it is not hiding. So because we didn't write anything. So now we need to use @if block. So @if condition round bracket person name dot errors partition control errors. What is required Let's add a question mark check over here also. Oh, something is wrong. Person name dot errors dot required. Question mark dot equal to true. No. What is this error? All required, all three expression and the expression means conditional expression. This dot error. Okay, dot was missing. Fine. So in this, so what is this? We have created a variable in the client side, and we are storing all the data we are getting in the ng model into this variable. And here, if in the error we have required error, then we have to show this. So see now. So by default, we are able to see this. Once I type, it is going away. Again, if it is empty, it is visible, right? But on the page load also that validation is coming. So we can hide that by checking if the text box is touch or not. So again, we will use @if dot touch we can use. And inside touch, we will have this div. So let's save and check. So by default, we are not able to see that validation, but user if touch and click away, you can see validation is coming. If we type, validation is going. So this is very basic validation required. Let's say we need the minimum length also. So minimum length, let's say at least 5 characters we need in the person name. So second parameter @if person name question mark dot errors question mark dot. Now the message will be min length. Why again we are getting the same error? No, okay. And here we will show minimum character 3 are required. Minimum, sorry, 5 characters are required. So on this text box, we have added two validation required and the minimum length 3. So let's check. So by default, it is not available. If I touch, required is coming. If I type, no, again, something is wrong. Min L is capital or small. Let's try. Now it is coming. So once we start typing, if we don't have anything value, this is required is coming, required validation. If we start typing, minimum character error is there. Once we type 5 character, that error message is also going away. Got it? So this is how we add the validation. And if we have to disable the button, that also we can do. So for that, we need to have a form. So let's add a form tag. Now, if we add the form tag now, all the elements we need to add that name attribute. Let's just do that also. So we have inserted the form tag. Now here we can get an instance of form tag like hash form is equal to, we have to store ng form over here. Fine. If we save now, we will get an error. Let me show you that error. Because previously we were using ng model without the form tag. So we didn't add the name attribute. But now we are using ng model within a form tag. So if you are using that, then you need to add name attribute everywhere. And name attribute, you can pass the property you are binding. Let's just do it quickly. Let's replace class name with this. Sorry, with name property, we need to replace now. Okay, here we just need to bind this property. Learn the copy paste, that will increase your speed, because if you are new and if you are preparing for the interview, you get the machine test, you need to have the speed so that only you can complete the task, whatever they have given in the specific time. So learn the copy paste tricks so that you can do it quickly. Fine. Now, if we save, we won't get that error. Fine. Now, so we have inserted it, right? Now, if we have to disable the button, if form is not valid, so we can make use of this property over button on the disable flag. So disable flag in the square bracket attribute dot valid. So let's save and check if it works. It is enabled. And if we pass the value, it is okay, vice versa. Sorry. So we need to add not over here. So by default, you can see button is disabled. But if we provide the validation, proper valid data, then form button will enable. So this is how you can disable the button also. Fine. So this is how you write the validation, regular expression and everything. So we are done with the API CRUD operation along with the template form and the validation also. So if we talk about the project, client part is done. We are able to create card, get card, update, and the delete also. Next thing we will try for the, let's see the what we have. Employee we will try at the end because it has single with multiple scenarios. I will try this at the last. Then we have client project. So this we will try. Now template form is done. So client project we will create with the reactive form. So we can complete that also. So now next topic, like we have completed the template form and its validation, services also done. Now we will take another page that will be, let's say we have created client. Now next thing is we have to create a project of client. Let's say client is there. Now client will have multiple projects going on. So to store that, we have this API like add client project, get delete all project, get all client project like that. Fine. So for that, we will create one more component. So let me just close everything. In component folder, I will create one more folder. Let's open a terminal. Ng generate component client project. Whenever your component name is a combination of two words, always make sure you make it a second letter capital. Pascal case you can follow, so that once you create a component, you will have hyphen in between those two words. Because this is normally followed in an industry, so you should also, while practicing also, you should follow the same. Fine. So we have created component. Now, once we create the component, next thing we have to create the routes. So let's create the route in our app route.ts. Let's copy. This will be client hyphen project component client project. And this we need to add it in the navigation also. We have added the navigation. So after client, let's copy and paste it. And it will be client projects. Then we just need to pass the URL also. So this is my URL path. Here we have to pass it over here. Let's save, and let's check it one more time if that component is opening. So if I click over here, you can see the UI is opening. Now, so first thing, again, I said like whenever we are starting a CRUD operation of any component, first thing you can complete the UI part. So if we see the UI part, this is the post API. Let's see the object. So for post API, we have so many fields. So here you can see client project ID is my primary key. And now here we are going to cover one more topic that will be with the foreign key. So here you can see client ID is again 0, means in this object, this is our foreign key. Again, lead EMP ID, this is also foreign key, means in this component, we have to implement, we need to get the employee dropdown and we need to have a client dropdown also. And basic things are same. So let me just copy paste the UI. Now here I'm just going to explain you the shortcut. So we have already completed the client, correct? So you can just copy whole UI and let's paste it into our HTML. And then we can make some changes and our almost form will be ready. Now over here, I will just remove the validation now. So first is like we need the project name, start date, expected date like that. So let me just pause the video and I will complete the basic form first. Fine. So by using the form we have designed in the client, I have just copy pasted that and made the changes. So let me just show you the form also. It's just same thing copy pasted. You can see label type, label wherever we need the date, we input type date is there. Fine. So now in client project, we are going to do the CRUD operation by using reactive form. So with that, we will be completing other form as well. Now, so in client, we have completed the CRUD operation by using template form. So template form was very easy. what we did, we created the object, and that object we binded with the different form element. That's it, by using ng model directive. Now, when it comes to reactive form is kind of different. In template form, we had very less code in .ts, more code was in HTML. But in reactive form, we have to write so much of code in the .ts and less code in the .html. Fine. So let's start it. Let me just close this. Now we are in the client project.ts. So first we have to create the form in the .ts. In template form, we had created an object, and then that object we binded to the HTML form. But here we need to create the form. So how do we create the form? So here, let's say I'm just going to give the name as project form. Data type, we are going to create form group is equal to new. We need to initialize the form group also. Form group, round bracket, curly bracket, enter. So this should be your form look like. Now, this is the form we have created. Now, inside this form, we have to provide what are the controls I'm going to have. Just consider like you are creating an object and how many properties you are going to have in that object, that like. But in case of reactive, we create controls. Fine. How do we create the control? Just let's see the object we have. So client project ID is a primary key, right? So let's have it colon. Now, this is like control. Then we need to provide the data type. So new form control like this round bracket, and here inside bracket we can initialize this also. So by it's a client project ID, it's a primary key. So primary key we normally initialize with 0. So here we will provide 0. Then second is project name. So let's copy again, new form control. Now project name, it's a string value, so we will initialize with single quote. Like this, I need to initialize all the properties. So let me just do that. I'm just pausing it because video length is so much increasing. Ultimately, you are going to see what I have written. See how we created the object in case of template form. Just like that, we have created our form. Whatever the properties we have in the object that we need to send, like that, we have to copy paste and create the controls. Fine. So here in the client project, this is our primary key, and we have some foreign keys also, like client ID and lead employee ID. So these are foreign keys. So when in our object we have some foreign keys, so we need to pass the data of that particular foreign key. So client ID, we will get the client. We have to get the client record, and that we need to show into the drop down. Just like that lead EMP, this is also an employee drop down it needs. So if you see the UI, here I have added two drop down, client and the lead employee. So first we have created the form. Now this form, we need to bind it to the HTML also. So let's do that now. So how do we do that? Let's just open a side by side. So we can have access to the form as well. So this is the form we have created. Now this form, we need to bind it to our HTML form, which we have created. So for that, first thing, in reactive form, always try to have a form tag. In template form tag is not that much mandatory, but in reactive form, you should have it. It's not mandatory, but you should have it. Fine. So here you need to add a square bracket and form group. Form, why it's not suggesting group is equal to this, and we need to provide project form over here. We might have one issue. Why it's not suggesting is in import statement, we need to add reactive form module. See, once I added it, the error got away. Fine. So in case of template form, if we have to use ng module, we added form module, correct? But in case of reactive form, you need to add reactive form module. The module you have to add into import statement. Fine. Previously, we had the app module. This we used to add in the app module, but now we don't have it. So in the component itself, we need to add it. Clear? So we have added it. So whatever the form name you have created, this is our project form. So we have binded it. Now in each control, means each input element, we have to bind form control name equal to, and here you need to provide the property name, means control name. This is primary key. Primary key we don't show into the form. So we will start with the project name. Here it will go project name like that. Let me just copy. So what I will do is, just to save the time, what I will do, I will search the input, this thing, and I will replace that with this. So everywhere I will get this. Copy, paste, replace. Fine, just this I have to replace. Now wherever I have the start date, now I need to bind the start date over here like this. Expected end date will go over here. Like that we need to bind. Contact person name. Where is contact person? It will go over here. Then we have contact person contact number. Then we have contact person email ID. Total employee will be working for this project. Actually, I didn't explain the whole project because ultimately it would have taken time. But once we complete the project, then you will understand what the project was about. Project description means project details. It will go over here. Project cost will go over here. And now we have true drop down. So first is like select client. So here we need to bind client ID, whatever the client project is, means this project, which this project belongs to which client. Then we have lead EMP ID. So this will go over here. Let's save and let's check if we have any error or not. Fine. So we don't have any error. Just to show the initialization. So we have created this form, and while initialization, we have just kept it at empty. Let's say in the project name, I will add MMM and let's save. So now if you see, while initializing this form, we have got that value. So while initializing any form, if you have to provide any default value, so you can provide it like it over here. Fine. Now, so we have created our form, and that form we have binded to our HTML element also. Next thing, in our form, we have client ID and the lead employee ID. So for that, we need to get clients and the employee dropdown. So let's write for client ID, we have for getting all clients, we already have a service function that is in over here, get all client. But for employee, we didn't create it. So let's create one more function, get all employee. Now in this function, in this service file only I'm creating. Again, just to repeat, you can have multiple services also based on your different module. But if your project is small, you can have a single service also, and you can write all the functions over there. But as the rule suggests, whenever we work on the industry project, any file should have at least 3000 to 4000 line. But if your file is getting more than that number of line, you should have to divide it. Fine. So if your project is small, you can always have a single service file and write all the code into there. That is also fine. Now, here we need to write the API call. So let's copy the same thing and we will just change the API endpoint. Fine. And here we need the get all employee API call. So let's check the Swagger and the get all employee. So this is the API call to get all the employee. Let's try it out. Some employees are already there, so we don't have to worry about creating it. So this is the method which we have to put it over here. Fine. Now we have to create an instance of what do we say, interface of this also. So let's copy these fields. We have created model in interface. We will create it. Export interface employee. Let's remove this and put it over here. And let's try to use the controls Alt Shift. You can select all the line at one go. And here it will be replaced with string. Let's copy paste and replace it all. And role. Fine. So we have created interface. Now in the client project, once the page load, we need to call two API. Actually three API to get all project also, to get employees and to get the client. So obviously we need to make the API call. So that API call we will trigger on the page load. So implements OnInit we need to write. Once we implement, it will ask us to create ng OnInit also. So let's do that. OnInit. And we are going to make API call from this service. So let's create the API call. Let's create the object of our client service. So client is equal to inject client service. Fine. Now we have to create two respective function to get all employee, actually three, but let's first get all employee. This dot client service dot get all employee result colon API response model. Whatever the data we get, that we need to store it also. So let's create client list colon any, sorry, we have created interface. So let's use that employee and here, whatever the data we will get, that we'll need to store it over here. Sorry, this is employee, na? Employee list. Why I'm forgetting subscribe? Data. We have created one function for get all employee. Just like that, we need another function for get all client also. Let me just complete this. Then you will understand why I'm doing this. This will be get all clients. And just like employee list, we need another to get all client. That will be client list. And data type will be client like this. And here this. And these two function we need to call on the page load. So this function we will call on the page load, mean ng on init. Get all client. Then this dot get all employee. Fine. Now, once this component initialize, we are going to have the data available in this API call, and we are going to store the data over here. So now this we can use it in the form to bind it. So first was employee, right? So here at the red for loop, round bracket over here, we need to create option value type as a property binding. So here item dot employee ID we need to bind over here. And while displaying, we will display the employee name because whoever is going to use the application is going to select that employee. So item dot employee name. And we will showcase the code also. Item code. Fine. Just like this, we need to bind the dynamic client also. So let's copy. Let's go over here. Now instead of employee list, we have to use client list. Over here, client ID. And here, client name. Company name. It's not client, it's actually client, but from API, we get the company name. Let's save and let's check. So now in our drop down, we should get our clients, see, and in employee, we are getting the employee also. Means the project we are creating, the project is of this client and this person is going to lead this project. Fine. So we have created object, data also we have binded. Now we need to write the post API and post API. So first on click of save. So this is the save button, right? So either we can write our normal click event over here. This is specific to reactive, let's say on save project. Let's copy. Now, so in template form, we had the object and that object was getting updated. But now here we have the form. Now, how do we read the form value and that object? Because for API, we cannot send the form. We need to send the object. So this dot, okay, we need to create the API call also. Now let me just copy this. I won't be covering delete over here because we have already done that. So add client project. Let's see if we have separate API for add and update. Or do we have the one API only? No, we have single API only. That is, no, wait. Yeah, again, we have the single API only. Let's get the URL. This is my method name. It will go over here. So single API for add and the update, add client or project update. Fine. Now, so over here, this dot client service dot add update client project. Now here we need the form value. So how we can do a local variable I'm creating form value. This dot our form name, that is project form dot value. So if we write like this, we will get an object, and then that object we will pass it to the API. And this object we will pass it over here. Use subscribe result colon any, sorry, API response model is there. API call will be same. Doesn't matter if it is your template form or reactive form, API call code will be same. Again, if result dot result is true, we will show alert box and we will say project created successfully. And in else, we will show the error. That too will come from the API. So res dot message. Fine. Let's check this now. If we are able to create the project, let's just check how many records we have. So this is the API for particular getting all the project. So let's see how many records we have. So only 3 projects are currently created. Now we are going to create new. So let's say employee or bank ERP. This is our project name. Let's check the start date. Let's say we are going to start from coming Monday. Expected end date. Let's add something. Then contact person name, PPP, mobile number. Let's add a dummy mobile number. Contact number PP at the rate dummy.com. Employee count. Let's say 20 employees are going to be working. Project costing. Let's say 1,50,000 something. Okay. Some project description. Now, so this project is of, let's say, Infosys, and it is going to be led by Karan Mane. Fine. Now let's inspect and let's click on the save button. We have added the debugger. So on click of save, you can see we have got the API call. So this is the project form. And if you select the value, so you can see we have got the object. So same like the object what we created in the template form. Here you can see client ID we have got 163 and project lead by also we have got. So all the data, whatever the data we filled into the form that we have got, and we have got it in the object format. Now this only we need to pass it. So let's add a debugger on here and let's try it. Continue. And on result property, you get true means project created successfully. Let's check the get API call over here once more time. Previously only 3 projects were there. Let's try execute again. So you can see the latest created project bank ERP. Understood? So this is how we have completed the reactive form. Same thing. Okay. So the changes were we have to create the form. These are not inside reactive form. We will have control. We can initialize like this. Now comes the part of validation. So how do we, just like the template form, it will be like same, but instead of adding the validation rule in the HTML template, we have to add the validation rule in the form itself. So when we create the form, here only you need to add the validation. So let's say for project name, after this empty initialization, we have to add a comma, then square bracket. So validators, this import you will need dot required, because we can have multiple validations. So that's why we have array. We said like this is required. Then min length, validator dot min length, how minimum some character, let's say 4 characters are there. Like that, you will add so many validation pattern, email, as much as you can. Now on the project name, we have added the validation. So how do we validate over here? In the form also, we need to show like this is required. So for that, let's add text danger. Now over here, we have to use this form. And here first we need to add that. Let's add a span tag first. Now this span will have a message like this is required. But this should be visible once we have that error. So @mg, sorry, here our form dot controls, then square bracket, round bracket, and here we have to provide the control name, that is project name. Then dot errors, square bracket, single quotes. Here we need to add that question mark dot and required. So if in this control we have the error required, we need to showcase this. Just like this, let's copy, paste, and for main length. How many main length we said? 4 characters. So let's change the message. Minimum 4 characters required. Fine. Let's save and check if we are able to show the validation message. So here you can see validation message is coming. If I provide the value, my validation message should change. See, if I pass 4 character, that is also going away. But as we said, once the form load, we should not show the validation unless user touch that. We should not show that. So that also we can do the same thing like that. So above this div, we can have one more @ if statement. That too, if touch. So same thing, form and control dot touched. And this div will be inside this. So if this control is touched, then only we need to show the validation message. So see, by default, it is not coming. Once we touch, see validation message got triggered. Got it? This is how the validation. Again, if we have to disable the button, so we can make use of this form only. Whole form is valid or not, that we can display. So here, disabled form dot invalid. Let's save and check if we are able to see. See, by default, it is disabled now. If I provide the proper value, button got enabled. This is how we do the reactive form validation. Got it? So we have completed our basic part. We have already done. API call is done, template form is done, service is done, reactive form is done, data binding is also done. Next thing will be pipes. So pipe is very easy topic actually. So let's go back to our client, and in get all client, let's see if we are getting the data or not. Let me just see what type of data we are getting from the API call. I just want data where we have date something. Here we don't have date. Okay, fine, no worries. So what we can do is, let me show you the remaining pipe first. So when it comes to pipe, let me just close. Let's open a client. So when it comes to pipe, pipe is used to just format the data in the HTML. Okay. What I mean format is there are some default pipe and some custom pipes also we can create. So here you can see like person name is like this, company name somewhere it is in short means small case, somewhere it is in capital, but we want some uniformity. So while displaying, we just need to show the pipes in the company name as in the capital way only. So to use the pipe, whatever the pipe, there are some default pipes also. So first is like CapitalPipe I want to use. So we can add CapitalPipe. Sorry, uppercase. Uppercase pipe is there. Before using pipe, you need to import it. Before Angular 17, it was not like that. Without using importing also, you could directly use the pipe. But now from Angular 17, we have to import the pipe, then only we can use it. So in .ts, we have imported uppercase pipe. Now in HTML, we can use it. So how do we use that? Just add a straight line and uppercase. Let's save and let's check now. So now you can see all the company names are in the capital case. Just like that, we have small case, capital, small, lower case, capital case, date pipe. So many pipes are there. Let me just show you the date pipe example also. I'm just going to create an example, current date, and in this variable, I'm going to store current date, new date. Let's try to print this variable at the top. over here. So what we have created one variable, and that variable we are trying to print it over here. Now, if we save, see, date contains everything. But if I have to show just the date part, so I can use pipe. So pipe is DatePipe. So now you can see it is not suggest anything because we have to first import it. So let's go to .ts, just like UpperCasePipe, we need to import DatePipe as well. Now it will suggest, see, and if we add just the DatePipe, see how it shows the data, just the date it is showing. But again, we can pass the parameter also. So in HTML, we can pass colon. Let's say I want to format properly, dd hyphen mmm hyphen yy. So date, then month name and the year 2 times only. So see, 21 August 24. If we pass 4 times y, so it will show the complete year. Let's say, getting it? So what format you want, instead of hyphen, you can plus slash also, forward slash also, whatever you feel. So like that, it will provide you the formatted date. Okay. So this, so many default pipes are also there. So you can just visit an Angular dev site and you will get the list of pipe is the easiest one. But inside pipe, we have Async pipe and the JSON pipe. Okay. Now, in the client object, we have this object, right? In client object, this is the variable, which is an instance of our class. Now, if we try to print this, let's create at the top, let's have a paragraph. Inside paragraph, I'm trying to print the object. Fine. Let's save. So now here it is showing like object. We cannot directly print the object. How do we access this? By using the dot operator. But if I have to see what things are there in the object, so I can make use of a JSON pipe. Right now it is not suggesting. First we need to add the import. So let's add JSON pipe. JSON. Fine. So if we add the JSON pipe, whatever the object we have, that will be converted to the JSON format. So now you can see it is available. If you change the value, that is also available over here. See, whatever the current object is, you can see it over here. So JSON pipe is there. One more pipe is Async pipe. Now we will see the Async pipe. So Async pipe is the difficult one. For Async pipe, because my API written the object. So Async pipe, again, we need to use the map operator. Fine. So we will use JSON placeholder API. So JSON placeholder API. So this is an API which provide a mock data. So what I need to do, this API integration I need to do, and whatever the data I need to display, that I want to display it somewhere. So the normal way is, what do? We write an API call, we subscribe, we store that into a variable, and then that variable we use it in the HTML. But instead of that, we can directly subscribe the response from that API call in the HTML only by using Async pipe. So how do we do that? So let's go to client service and let's create the function first. So in the client service, I'm just writing get all user. Now, simple API call, I'm just writing return this .http .get API call round bracket and my URL. So our normal API function is there. Now this function I need to call in the client component. So what I can do, I will create one observable. So whenever we talk about async pipe, so async pipe is like we can subscribe to the observable. So in client component, what I will do, I will create an observable. Let's say user list. Now, whenever you create an observable, try to add a dollar at the end, because while working in the industry project, this is the naming convention we follow. Colon observable, that to a data type of any, like this, or is equal to new observable any. Fine. So we have created our observable. Now in OnInit, what we can do to this observable, we have to pass the data. User list equal to this dot client service dot get all user. That's it. So we are not going to subscribe to this. So whatever the response, this function is going to return the data type of observable. So that data type of observable we are storing to this variable, because this variable data type is also observable. Now this observable we can directly subscribe to the HTML. So before that, first we need to add the async pipe. Async pipe. Fine. So now let's say over here, we just need to showcase the data in ULLI format. So at the rate for loop. So instead of this, we have to pass this and we are going to subscribe in the HTML. So async pipe. Fine. And over here, we can have li now and item dot live username is there. So let's print it. So what we are doing, we are directly subscribing in the HTML. So we don't have to, again, we have not reached to that topic where we unsubscribe and everything, but just the topic was there, pipe was going on. So I'm explaining this. So at the end, I will be explaining the actual benefit of writing this. So here, the benefit of async pipe is you are directly subscribing from the function over here only. Okay. So let's save and let's save. This file also we need to save. So here you can see API call might be completed and whatever the data we have got, that is visible over here. So what we did by using async pipe, we have actually subscribed the data from this function directly in the HTML. So this is also async. So in the pipe, just async pipe is something difficult. Remaining all are very easy. Then one more question will be like, how can we create a custom pipe? So we will create once we have the scenario also. Fine. So we have completed our pipe topic also. Then what else we can complete? So reactive form class model is also done. Now, one more thing is like how we create the custom constant file. So as you can see over here like these are nothing but static data. Okay. Now, instead of writing the code, writing the method name over here, as a good programming standard suggests, these values we should not write the static values anywhere. It should come from the constant file. So let's create a constant file. So in our project file in app folder, we can create a constant folder. Constant, right? Let's create a dot constant dot ts. Again, it will be a normal dot ts file only. Now inside this, we have to create a constant. So export constant. Fine. Sorry, equal to is missing. Like this, it will be your constant. Now inside that, you can have multiple inner object also. Let's say API. And while creating constant, name should be in the capital. So API method colon, it will be an object. And inside that, let's say get all employee. And value will be whatever the employee method name was there now. So this will go over here. Fine. Just like that, you can have all your methods stored over here. Get all client colon. Let's get the method name. Where was it? This was okay here. This will go over here. Now, so we have stored our method name in the constant file. So now instead of hard coding this, let's remove this and now constant. See dot API method dot get all client. Now over here also constant dot API method dot get all EMP. So now code also looks fine. And if you have something that is going to be used over multiple places, so from a single place, your value is going to come. Now here we have stored API method. Then let's say we have to provide the validation message also. So validation messages colon object and validation, let's say required. This is right. Now this also. So like that, you can create multiple inner object and you can store the related data over here. You can store in some AWS URL if you are using to show the file data, blog URL, regular expression if you are whatever. data you are going to use over all the project, that you can store it over here, the coding wise. Okay. So this is the constant. Fine. So next topic is input and output. Reusable component. How do we create the reusable component? That we will see. So in Angular 18, we have one more topic, that is signal. So from 17, we have got that. So we will discuss a little bit about that. Now, so what is signal? So signal is something new which we can compare with RxJS, something like RxJS. Those who are totally new, those who are learning, hearing signal for the first time. So just for a basic understanding, compare signal with our observable. What things we can do with observable, that same thing, some of it we can do with signal also. Now, how do we create a signal? So signal is just like a variable. Just consider how you create the variable in Angular, just like that we can create the signal. So let's say first name is equal to signal, right? And now, how do we initialize the value of the variable? By using equal to. Now, this is the signal. We can initialize the value. You can see initial value. So we can write initialize like that. So we have created our signal. Now, let's say I need to print the value of the signal, or I need to read the value of this signal. So what I can do, let's go to HTML. And after this heading, I will try to print it. So now if I directly print the variable value, means signal value, so it is showing some warning. First name is a function and should be invoked like this. So whenever we are reading the value of the signal, we have to actually invoke it like this. Let's put some value, Angular 18. Let's save, and let's check it. So now here you can see we have got the value. So how do you create a signal? Like this. And how do you read the signal? Like this. Doesn't matter if you are reading the signal in HTML or .ts. Same way. See over here, constant name is equal to this dot first name like this. Fine. So how do we create signal like this, and how do we read it? By invoking as a method. Consider like it's a method. Like how do we call a method? Just like that we invoke it. Fine. Now, this is how we created a signal. How we have read that is also done. Now, how do we change the value of the signal? So for that, let's add a button in over here. Let's add a class btn danger change f name. Fine. Now on this button click, what we need to do, we need to change the signal value. So let's create a function, click change f name. Let's create this function. Now in this function, we have to change the value of this signal. So how do we do that? So this dot first name dot set method is there, by which we can change the variable value. And you can pass the new value React.js. So let's save and let's check. So by default, you can say Angular 18 is there. Now, if I click on over here, you can see new value got displayed. So by using the set method, we can change the signal value. Fine. So this is just a basic how we create the signal. Now, in this particular project, we didn't showcase the client project list. So let's show that by using signal now. So let me just, or let's keep this as it is. Now I will create one more variable where I will be storing the project list. So project list is equal to signal round bracket, and will initialize with empty. But while creating signal also, we can provide the data type also like this. So now we have already created the interface of client project. Where was it? I think we didn't create it. So let me just open the Swagger project API. Sorry, prepare.miniproject.in. And here client Strive project. And here we have this API where we get all the projects. So let's try it out, execute. So this is the object which we are going to get. So let's create interface of it. Let's copy. Let's use that site, convert. Let's use this. Let's copy. Let's go to our model.ts file. We have interface over here. Export client project. Fine. Now we can use this over here. So the point was, while we create a signal, we can strongly type it also like this. It is going to hold array of this. Let's add the import also. Fine. So in this, we have created signal, and in this signal, we are, what is the error? Has no expected member. Export interface and this. Okay. Let's add semicolon, but it should not throw that error for the semicolon. Okay, we didn't save this. That's why it was giving error. Let's add the semicolon. Doesn't matter if you add a semicolon or comma, it will work the same, but let's just add it. Fine. So while creating signal, if in your signal you are going to store object or array of object, you can strongly type this also like this. Fine. Now we need to create one more API call also, because to get the data, we need to write the API call function. So in client service, let's copy. Sorry, this was the function. Now we have created constant also. So let's go to constant, add one more constant. That was get capital, get all project colon. Let's see the value also of the API method name, get all client projects. Let's paste it over here. Fine. Now over here we can use, let's change the method name first, get all client project. Why I'm doing like this? Get all client project, and here instead of get all employee, we have to write get all client, get all project. Fine. Now this function we will call it in the our component. Now here we will use the component. Sorry, we need to first write an API call. So let's say this is our API call, and this will be, let's say, get all client project. Now here get all client project API call will be there. Now this function is going to return the data type of project. So that we need to store into our signal, what we created. This, right? So we can make use of this. So how do we update the value of the signal? So this dot project list dot set, and you can pass result dot data. And this function we will call it on the page load also. Right? Now we have the project list in this signal variable. So let's print it also. So this was the table we had. Now let's uncomment this. Now over here, instead of client is, we have to use this, but this is the signal, so we have to call it as a function. Now here, what things we have? So client name, let's say project name, we can display total employee. What else we are getting? Employee who is leading. So employee name and the contact person name. Or start date we can show. And start date is must have a date type. So let's add a date. To use the DatePipe, obviously we need to add the import. So let's just quickly add that also. DatePipe. Date, and let's format dd -mmm -yy. Let's remove this edit and delete. We are not doing right now. Let's save all and let's check if it is properly showing the data. So here you can see project details are properly available. So this is how you can use the signal also. Now, what is the advantage of signal? Now from Angular 18, if we show this app config, you can see over here, provide change detection is something is there, right? So what is the purpose is, so see, we can disable the chain detection. The benefit of signal is, because Angular how the change detection work by using zone.js. But Angular team is slowly trying to get rid of that zone.js, because whatever the functionality it was doing, checking for the change detection, the same thing is going to be handled by Signal. So now we don't have to depend on the zone.js to read the change detection. So for that, we normally use the Signal. So in upcoming versions, let's say 19 and 20, they might finally get rid of the zone.js. So you should be familiar with Signal. Whenever you are creating object or array or anything, try to use Signal only. Fine. I will try to create some projects where we will just use the Signal for everything, form, object, array, holding, and everything. Fine. So this is how you use the Signal. So now in Signal, what else we can see? Variable creation we have seen. How do we access that also seen? And how do we change the variable value also we have seen. Fine. So some again scenarios will be there, but I have already created one dedicated with the for the Signal. So just check out that also. Do visit my channel, and specific dedicated video is also there for the Signal. Okay. So just check it out. So now Signal is also done. Next thing, we can go for the reusable component, and there we can cover input and output also. So just like we have created component folder, let's create one more folder. Let's name it as reusable components. Now inside this folder, I have to create one component. So in Bootstrap, we have an alert box. Let me just show you Bootstrap. In Bootstrap, we have an alert box. See, this is alert box. So, and the HTML for this is just the short one. Fine. Now I have to create a reusable component for this. Reusable means, let's say in all the component, I have to show the alert box. Whatever the message we get from the API call, that I need to display in the, instead of that alert box, we have to show the message in this alert box. So in all the component, having this HTML will be repeated code. So instead of that, we can create a reusable component. So let's create a reusable component. Right click on the reusable component folder, open in a terminal. Let's create component ng generate component alert. Let's enter. So it will create my component. Now in that component, I have to put this HTML code. Let's put it over here. Fine. Now this alert box component, I will try to use into, let's say, my client over here. We have seen over here. So let's try to use alert. But if we have to use it, I think it has automatically added also. Yeah, here you can see it has automatically added. So this is how VS Code is also evolving day by day. Just like we have imported this, so it has added the import statement also. Fine. So here also we are showing, let's showcase the same alert in our client project also. At the top we can show for now. Fine. Let's just save all and let's see if we are able to see the alert box. So here you can see in client project also we are able to see, and our client also we are able to see. But this is kind of static. In both the component, we are able to see the same message and everything. Now, whenever we talk about reusable component, reusable is something in all the pages, wherever we are going to use that, we should pass some value. That value it is supposed to show dynamic content, because currently in the, what do we say, our reusable component, this is static. So now what things we can make dynamic? This alert type. Then we have the message. So let's create input now. Now you will understand what is input. So first add the input over here. Input. So if there is a reusable component, let's say you have a parent component, inside that parent component, you have a child component. And from parent component, you need to pass the data to the child component. You will have to pass that by using input. So this is how you create. Now it will be just a normal variable. Let's say alert type, data type string, empty. This is our normal variable, but I have to convert this variable to an input. So in front of that, I will write input. So this is property decorator. This is a class decorator. So this is a property decorator. Okay. Because we are appending this instead of in front of the variable, nothing but a property. So this is a property decorator. Now I can use this over here by using interpolation. Fine. Now This component has one input. So wherever we are using this component, we can pass the value to this input. So this is client, right? And that is nothing but a property. So square bracket alert type. String value we can show, let's say success. And in the client project, we can pass error something. Fine. So we have created input, and wherever we are using that component, we are passing some value to that input also. So here you can see in the client project, we are showing success. And if we go to the client project, here you can see error is coming. So first thing, we made it dynamic. Second thing, message also we need to make it dynamic. So let's create one more input. At the rate input, round bracket, message colon string is equal to empty. Fine. And this message we will show in over here also. This was static. Now we need to make it dynamic like this. Now again, wherever we are using this component, we can pass a now message also. Let's say here, hi from client page. Just like that, over here also, we will showcase something else. Message, welcome to project page. Let's save and let's try. So now in client project, you can see error and welcome to project page is coming. In client component, here you can see success. So message is also dynamic. One more problem is there. If it is success, this color background is fine. But if here error is there, we should have a dynamic color also. So let's do that. So that will be a normal code. We don't need to create input for that. So let's say in alert type, we might have, let's say, warning, danger, alert. So like that, we can add a dynamic class. So here, let's use a dynamic class. So class name is equal to. Now, instead of class name, because we need to add multiple condition, or for now, let's just decide like if we have success or the error. Fine. So if alert type, this is property binding, not ng class. Fine. Alert type equal to success. How we are passing the value? Capital. No? Let's compare it with capital. If it is success, we will add this class, otherwise this class. So if it is success, we will add this class, and not means might be a danger. So we will add danger class. So now our class will also be dynamic. So let's try. No, again, spelling mistake is there or something wrong is there. Alert success. Yeah. Let's copy properly. And here, alert danger. No, again, something is wrong. Let's try to inspect and see what is applying or not. Alert success is there. Okay, got it. So since we are using this property binding, this was not getting added. So this class, we can put it over here also. Either you can use the normal class or the property binding. You cannot have the both. Fine. So let's remove this now. Let's save. Now it will work. So now over here, since it was a success, so you can see green background is there. In the project page, it was an error, so you can see error block here. This is how a reusable component is there. Fine. Now, from parent component, if we have to send the data, we can send the data by using input. But what if from child, we need to send some data back to the parent? So there we have to make use of the output. So for output, let's try to create a reusable button component. So I'm just creating one more component. Ng generate component or my button name I'm giving. So traditional button we have, but what I want, I need to create my own button. So over here in the HTML box, we will have just a normal button. Now, just by seeing this button, how many inputs we can have? We first need to show the text, then class, just the basic one. So we will need two input. So at the rate input, button text. Data type will be string equal to empty. And second input will be for class, like what type of class we need to show. Input round bracket btn class colon again string is equal to empty. Fine. So we have created two inputs. Let's bind it also. So button text will go over here in interpolation, and class name we have to add it over here. So this is the variable. This we will add it over here by property binding. So class name. We can use ng class also, but to use ng class again we need to import that common module. So why to import now? We can go for the property binding. Fine. So we have created our button component. Let's just close everything. Now this button component we can make use in the client project. So in client, we had the form, right? So here we have used our normal button. So now instead of this normal button, we will use our reusable button. So app my button. Fine. Once you write it, it is actually importing that also component. Otherwise, you cannot use it. Okay. Now, this component is nothing but my button component. It has two input. So first is button class. So let's pass button class. So this is my button class over here. Now we need to show the button text also. So button text. Now button text is dynamic. So this we can pass it over here conditional. Let's copy. Let's paste it over here. Fine. So this is our normal button. So let's check if button is visible properly. So here you can see save project. Sorry, no, we should check client. Fine. So now over here you can see save button is there. Save client button is coming. But from where it is coming? See, this button is coming from my reusable component. Got it? It's not a normal button. This button is coming from my reusable component. If you can see, the selector is over here. Now the first part is input. It is properly working. But once I click, I need that click event in my parent component. So for that, you can create a output event emitter into our reusable component. So over here, you need to create an output. So let's import it also first. Output and event emitter we need. So we can use the output, but with the combination of event emitter, we can pass the data back. Fine. So here on click, just a normal function. And from this function, what? Okay. Sorry, first we need to create the output. So at the rate output, round bracket on btn click is equal to new event emitter. I'm just keeping data type as any for now. Sorry, capital O should be there. Fine. Now from this function, what I need to do, I need to emit this output. So on button click dot emit. So it's like we are emitting an event. Okay. So let's see. And this function we need to call on our normal button. So that will be normal click event. So click function round bracket. So let's add debugger everywhere so that you can understand the flow. So here also I have added the debugger. Now this function, this component has one input, two input, and one output. So output is nothing but an event. So we can write it like the event. See, it is suggesting that output. Now, once this button is clicked, this function is going to trigger. And on click of this function, we need to call this function. So this function will go over here. Let's add a debugger over this function also so that I can show you the flow also. It is already there. Now let's just save and check. Now let's import. Now if I click on save client, see, first debugger we have got in my reusable component because this button is in my reusable component. And once we emit this output, then our parent component event will trigger. See, got it? So this is our output. We didn't pass any data, but it's nothing but we have passed the emit. We have emitted our what do we say, event. Now in the emit, we can pass the data also. Now we don't have that proper example, but here I'm passing some data admin. Fine. So while emitting this output, I'm passing some data also. Now this data I can catch in my parent component. So we have to add a dollar event one. Always add dollar event only. Fine. Now this function is going to have a parameter. So let's create a parameter data colon string. So let's save and check. So this is how we can pass the data from child to parent also. Now just see. So once I click on save child, so while emitting my output, I'm passing some data. So if I continue, so here you can see I'm getting admin. So whatever the data I emitted from my child component, that data I can receive it over here. Then you can use it over. Fine. So this is how you pass the data from child to parent. So to pass the data from parent to child, we make use input, and to get the data from child to parent, we make use of the output. Fine. So this is nothing but a reusable component. Again, there are many scenarios, but I have already created a separate playlist for reusable components. So just go through all these, all the possible scenarios I have covered. Fine. So till now we have completed data binding, then template form, routing. These are very basic concept. Then reactive form also we have completed. Then we have completed service also, how we use service. Pipe also completed. How to create interface and class also created. This is also done. Then reusable component means input and output. Fine. So these are very basic concept in Angular. With this knowledge also, you can work on a project. Okay. Now, so let's say the project we are working. So we have, if we enter our URL 4209, so by default, we are able to access the application, but it should not. We should have a login page, and once user is logged in, then only we should have the access. So for that, we have to implement the login page. So this is the project folder. So for when it comes to login, so we have to, in case of admin application, we have to create a login page, login component, and a layout component. There we will have a navbar in case of admin application. But if it is a website, we just need a login page. That's it. You won't need a layout page because in the app component, you will have the navbar. So layout component we need for navbar. Fine. So as this is an admin application, so we will follow this structure. Now let's create an admin component, login component, new terminal, ng generate component login. Now, again, so many scenarios, again, so many advanced concepts are there. You can just follow my YouTube channel, go there. All the other advanced concept I have already taken. Fine. But this is a limited crash course kind of video. So just the basic topic we will be covering. So layout component. So we have created login and the layout component. Next thing, we need a login template. So let's try to Google login template Bootstrap. So we can use it from Bootstrap MD site also. So this is also there. Let's use this. So show code. Let's copy the whole code. Let's paste it into the login component. Now, so login component is ready. Now, when it comes to login functionality implementation, the first thing we have to, after creation of the component, we have to change the routing structure. So first route will be, let's say, let me just create one more route for the login. So path colon login, and component which I will be opening is the login component. Fine. Now, if I don't have anything in the URL, previously we used to redirect to master, but now we have to redirect to login. Means by default, my login page will be visible. After that, I have to create one more path that will be with empty, and component will be my layout component. Okay. And for this route, I will have the children route. And all the routes which we are going to access after the login will be part of the children. So I will remove this and I will put it over here. Got it? So just see the image of this routing structure. This is our default route, then our login route, and then we will have again empty path. but component will be layout, and all the routes which we are going to access after the login, they will be part of the children over here. So this should be your routing structure when it comes to admin kind of application. Fine, let's save. So by default, our login application should work, but it's not coming still. Only layout is coming. That's why let me just remove this. So now you can see login, it is coming, but we have the navbar also. So as I said, we have created one more component, that is layout. So navbar was in our app component. So let's remove this from over here. And this navbar will go into our layout component. So as layout component will be here. So obviously when we navigate again, we need to add the router link also. So let's copy the same router link over here also. Again, router link and router outlet is there. So we need to import it. Router link, router outlet. Fine. We have done that. So we should not have any error. Now let's just try. So now in app component, we will just have a router outlet. So see, if user logged in, we have the login page. Why this is not getting proper to the bottom container? Let's try to remove this. Still it is not behaving same. Okay, let it be. That is not our concern first. UI designing, you can choose any login page which is working properly. Now, as we don't have API for now, so first thing, login part we are going to do, but let's say we will do with a static login. So if you go to my channel, there are so many videos with all the versions. How do we do the login part with the Angular? But same process I'm following over here. Just instead of API, I will be just hard coding the data login. Fine. So we have email address and the password. So let's close everything. Now we are talking about the login component. So in login component, we have the text box like email ID and the password. So let's create form for that. So here login obj colon any. Either you can create interface also, just to save the time I'm going with any, but you can create interface or class, and then instead of any, you can bind that. So email colon empty password colon empty. Fine. Now this object I need to bind to the form. Again, template form we are going to use. So we need to import forms module. Then we can bind this object to our form. So this is the text box here. Square bracket, round bracket, ng model object dot. What property we need to bind? So email. It will go over here. Same like that. Let's copy. Let's paste it over here. And here we need to bind the password field. But I think this is under the form tag. Yes. So here you can see all the input elements are inside the form tag. So if we are using ng model inside a form tag, name attribute becomes mandatory. Otherwise, we get that error. So let's add it over here. Let's add a password also. Now, on click of login, we need to call our function. Let's remove unnecessary things for now. Remember me also, we don't have it. Now on click of login, click function on login. Fine, let's create this function. Now let's assume we are hard coding it. So if we need to hard code everything. So if login object, this dot login object dot email is equal to, let's see, user enters admin@gmail.com, and this dot login object dot password is equal to, let's say 112233. So this is hard code login. So if user has provided this email and this password, then only we will allow him to log in. Now from .ts, we have to navigate. Where we will navigate? Again, let's see the routes. So if user is successfully logged in, we will navigate to any of this component. So let's navigate to employee client. Fine. Now from .ts, we have to navigate. So in routing, we missed that part. So now I'm covering it over here. Now we need to create the instance of router. So router is equal to inject. What we need to inject? Router service. Now over here, this dot router dot navigate by URL. So whatever the thing we used to do in HTML router link, that same thing we can do from .ts by this. And where we want to navigate, let's say client route. Let's copy paste the spelling. If spelling mistake is wrong, we won't be able to redirect. Fine. So if user provided proper email ID and proper password, we are actually navigating. But if user didn't provide this credential, we will show message like wrong credential something. In case of real API, you will get the error message from API also. Fine. And once user is successfully logged in, we need to store into local storage or session storage something that user is logged in. So let's use local storage dot set item. Again, if you are learning and if you are going to appear for the interview, try to have an example ready with local storage CRUD. I have already created so many videos because in the machine test, you normally get asked that kind of scenario. They will ask you to create a CRUD operation by using local storage. Some companies will provide API, some won't. So you should be familiar with local storage with CRUD. Again, JSON file server CRUD. So these things you should be aware. Fine. So what is this Angular 18? No, our project is employee ERP, EMP, ERP. This is my key user. And what we need to store? Just the email ID. So this email ID we will store to the local storage. Fine. Let's check if we are able to navigate or not. So let's try the wrong password first. On click of login, you can see wrong credential is coming. Let's try proper password. And password was 112233. If I click on login, let me show you the local storage also. So currently in the local storage, we don't have any data. Now, if I click on login, why it is giving wrong credential again? What are we comparing? 1122. Okay, 3 was missing. Let's try with this now. So admin@gmail.com. Fine. If I click on login, I should be able to navigate. See, we have navigate back to we are into the application where we can see the navbar and everything. But why this is not taking the 100% weight? Let me just quickly check. Container, let's remove that container. Let's save and check. Yeah. And PT1 was there. Let's remove that also. We don't need this. So now navbar is there. And let me show you the local storage again. So once we log in, we have stored the data into local storage. So that data is visible over here. And we should have a log off button also since we have implemented login functionality. So obviously we need the login logout functionality also. So this is the navbar in the layout page. So we had this search button. So let's make use of that to log off. Now, when we say log off, what we have to do? Obviously, we need to again navigate back to the local login page. Plus, we need to clear that local storage data also. So let's create function on log off. Let's create this function. Again, from this function, we have to navigate back to the login page. So again, router is equal to inject. This is the new thing. You should follow it. Sorry. Router. Now over here, this dot router dot navigate by URL and where you need to navigate login. So let's enter login and whatever the data we stored while login, we need to clear that. So over here, this we need to clear. Remove item. And this is the key which we want to remove. Let's try this if we are able to again log off the user also. So currently, if you see in the local storage, we have the data. Now, if I click on log off, see again, we are in the login page and we don't have it. But we know that we logged off. But if I try adding the URL in this, still I'm able to log in. This should not happen because we didn't log in, we log off. So still user is able to log in. So we can restrict this by using guard. So there is a new concept that is guard that I wanted to explain. So login is not a concept in Angular, but to explain guard, I need to implement login page first. So now we have to create the guard. So in service folder, I will be creating a guard. So there are so many types of guard. It will showcase also. So ng generate guard auth. Just a guard name I'm giving auth. Enter. See, so there are four guard: can activate, child, can deactivate, and can match. Again, one more is there, can resolve. Resolve guard is there, but that won't suggest like that. So can activate. So whenever any route is getting activated, before activation, this can activate guard will execute. So we need to write that code over here. Oh my God, why we got the error? Let's try it again. Systematic input. What is this error? Schematic input does not validate against the schema. Auth, app service, project, Angular tutorial. Data implements must not have fewer item. Data path implement must not have fewer items one. Let's try to Google this. I'm also not aware like why this error is coming. Universal, why I will need universal. Let's try creating one more folder and let's try to create over there. Inside this guard, let's try to create it over here. Ng generate guard auth, enter. Still same error. Data path implement must not have fewer item. Let's try googling this error. It's strange why we are getting this error. Schematic input does not validate against schema. Okay, it's related to waiting only. This Arambic implementation step was like this: skip. We should not allow processing to continue when prompt require minimum one input. Means this happened because an implementation step was likely skipped when using prompt. We should not allow processing to continue when a choice prompt require minimum one input. So we select that input, but I think it's not taking that input. But why? Let's try this. So what is happening is when we are entering, it's not taking that input. Let's try with the normal command prompt. CMD ng generate guard auth. Let's try it over here. No, same over. Let's try asking this issue. See, how do you Google? That is also very important. You put the exact word, you will get it. What is it? Okay. So for now, what I will do, I will just use guard from another project, which is in Angular 18 only. But I think you won't be facing the issue. Okay. If you are facing issue, the code I will be pushing, just use that. I'm not sure like why we are getting this. Fine. So let me just find the code of the route of guard. For now, I will be just creating a normal file auth.guard.ts. Let me just paste the existing code. Fine. So when you create the guard, you will get it something like this. This is the code which you will get, an arrow function you will get. Fine. So now this can activate guard is can activate. In the name itself, you can see before activating can activate. It is allowing that it can activate or not. Okay. So here we need to write the logic. First, we need to check if user is logged in or not. How we know that user is logged in or not? Because once user is successfully logged in local storage, we are storing something. So this only we can use it over here. So let's read the data constant local user is equal to local storage instead of set item get item, and it needs only one parameter. And here, if local user is there, not null, let's add a specific not null, because if the local storage is not there, it will give you null. So if not null, we will say return true, or in else we have to again redirect back to the login page. So again, we have to navigate back to the login page. So we need to create instance of router, inject router. Fine. So here again, we need to return false also, because this function need Boolean value to be returned. Sorry, constant. And before return, we have to navigate back to the login page. Like this. So we have created our guard. Now this guard we need to add on the routing file. Okay. So for now, let's say client page only we want to guard. So can activate, we need to write it over here. We can have multiple guards. So that's why array, and we have to pass our guard name. So that is can activate function. Let's use the import. Wait, why it's not suggesting guard? Yeah, sorry, the file name. Fine. So now we have created guard and we have just protecting our client route. So let's try it now. So if we try to access master, currently you can see in the local storage, we don't have data, means user is not logged in. We are trying to access master page. We are able to access it. But if I navigate to the client, see, we navigate back to the login page because we have added guard onto our client page, right? So this is how either you can add on the individual or over here you can add it. That is also the same thing. So it will add guard to all the children. Let's try now. So if I try master now, see, again, still I'm going back to the login page. But now if I log in 112233, I will be able to access it. See, got it? Even if I refresh, I'm still able to access it. But if I, or let's don't click on the logout button, just remove the data from the local storage. And if just refresh, see, local storage data is not there. So we again logged in, we again redirect to the login page. So this is guard. I hope it was understood. The issue we face, you might not face, but that is the command to use it. Fine. So this is everything basic topic we have completed again. So this video was to just have a single video where I will be explaining everything, because I have created the same tutorial in Hindi in a part by part, but so many were asking for English version. So that's why I have created this. But remaining topic, so many topics are still there, advanced topics. So I have dedicated videos for that. You can just follow what Hindi tutorial has the topic, and you can just Google it on, or you can refer my channel also. All the topics I have already covered it, JWT authentication, dynamic forms, everything I have covered it. Okay, along with various scenarios also. So you can just follow that also. Fine. Again, if some topics are not there, which you think I should cover, just add it in the comment. I will be covering that also. Fine. So for now, thank you. Please do like and subscribe.